Oh,
nope. Other than bringing it up. I really hope they caught that. That would have been very funny.
So do I. Hello and welcome to a very prepared episode of Lorebeards.
Yeah, I feel like it's a good example of when we were doing the Koresh stream. It's like, oh yeah, we totally prep before every stream. Absolutely.
100% do. So hopefully you can all hear us. So if you are on YouTube or if you are over on Twitch, do drop a quick, yes, we can hear you, because that would be nice. Far better than me just sitting here opening and closing my mouth without making a sound. Although I'm sure some of you might think the opposite.
But yeah, today's gonna be fun. Tonight's gonna be a pretty chill night. This is gonna be a nice chill stream. Feels like we haven't kind of had one of those in a hot minute. And by chill, I mean low effort as opposed to calm, because probably will not be calm very quickly.
Yeah, this is a stream that for me has yet to come. Now, obviously, I've discussed this map quite a lot with Sotek as each new version has come out, but I've never actually streamed live about it or done any videos about it at all so far. So this is going to be your first insight into what I think of different parts of the map. And if you don't know out there, I've actually been involved. Pardon? Have you done one already?
I think we did one already.
Oh no, I have not done one of the map.
Are you sure?
Haven't. I'm absolutely 100% certain, because I have rants that I've yet to rant about. We have discussed it here and there along the way, but we've not done a big proper commence the map rage.
Sorry, I interrupted you.
Yeah, so I was just going to say, yeah, I do have a few things on this one that I'm going to bring up. I have more of an opinion on this than I have on a lot of things Warhammery, because I have been commissioned to, in my time, do around about 100 maps for Games Workshop on various products ranging over the last 20 odd years or so. Actually a bit longer. God, I'm old. So yeah, I've been doing maps of one type or another for either roleplay books or for Black Library background books or for other things for a very long time. And when I was very first commissioned to do them for the first proper commissions for mapping was Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 2nd edition. And when I was first commissioned to do that, I decided that if I was going to do the maps right, I would have to make sure that I read up all the Games Workshop products so I could map all the locations that would be in those places. Now, I already owned them all because I am that nerd. So all I did was I went through every single book, game, White Dwarf, everything else that Games Workshop had ever produced, and put those into my maps. And that turned into what later became somewhat prosaically named my master map. My master map being the map that laid behind all of the maps that I created for Games Workshop. And one of the problems of writing the master map, of creating a master map, is that by the end of it, you realize that Games Workshop doesn't have any clue at all about all the various places that they've created. Yeah. And some of them are deep, some of them are meaningful, some of them have deep ramifications for the areas, and Games Workshop literally ignore them as each edition goes by, unless they are useful for a single game or a White Dwarf article or something. And then the stuff that may have not been seen for 20, 30, maybe even 40 years just pops up out of nowhere and arrives on a map. And the Old World map for me is a classic example of Games Workshop mapping, and that is that it's full of stuff that makes you go, oh, they've referenced that map, and full of stuff that makes you go, well, it was a choice to reference that map over the more recent ones, and also, wait a minute, isn't that fan material, which mysteriously disappeared? So yeah, it's an interesting map, and I've got quite a lot of opinions about some parts of it, particularly the parts that lie inside the Empire and lie within Kislev and to a degree Bretonia as well, because I've mapped all of those quite a lot. So thus I know where various choices were made by Games Workshop and whether I think they were good ones or not. That obviously it doesn't matter because their map is their map, but I can nevertheless say they chose this one and this one. What do you think's the better option? And you might agree with me, you might disagree, but I do like a good rant.
There are some really fun things we're going to look at today, because there are some things that are genuinely new, which is very cool. There are a number of locations and little additions on the map that have already started to have a significant impact on the Warhammer Fantasy world, and I think a good way. But there are also things that you look at, you're going to squint and go, what's going on here with this? What's happening? Which will be fun.
I can also, because some of it is based on maps that I've done. So there's a few areas that are like this mixture of, say, for example, a map that I might have done for second edition, so a map that might have been created for first edition, and that's Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, mixed in with some details that come elsewhere. So I can say exactly where some of them come from. Like, say, for example, Shamon Darek. I know exactly where that comes from, the north of Kislev, because it was mentioned in a single novel in Riders of the Dead. And I made sure to include that on my Kislev maps, and they've copy-pasted that one over. Because it's a chaos location, it tended to get picked up by Games Workshop because they were always looking for those cool little cartful potential places that they could use. So that one got picked up, and I was really pleased to see that on the map. But then when you look at some of the other decisions in Kislev, you're left with going, okay, so clearly 250 years ago, they're very different to what they are in, say, for example, near the end times. And that's okay, that's cool, because things change over time. But there's definitely some fun choices in there.
Yeah, so we're going to be doing a lot of just kind of wandering around the world in tonight's stream. Especially, I do have a list of all of the things that were updated with this specific map update that we'll be sure to kind of prioritize as opposed to some of the stuff that's a little older. But we are going to kind of bounce around because there are a lot of really interesting changes. Most of them, I think that you can look at them and have a healthy discussion if they're good or bad changes. Some of them I look at and go, okay.
Sure.
So, but it should be a good time.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this one because I am generally perceived to be by many people who are out there and have seen my work in the past as someone who has a very clear idea of what things should or shouldn't be. And for my own games, that is 100% the case. But when it comes to Games Workshop's IP, it's completely different because it's always an amorphous thing that is getting repurposed again and again for each edition of the game according to its needs. And whilst some of the changes for each game might frustrate me, particularly as someone who might be looking for all of the additions to match up for one reason or another, I can completely understand why the changes are there. And intellectually, I don't really care. They're different choices. And they put things in one place or another place, or they've changed shapes just simply because they chose one source or another source, or didn't know any sources and made it up. And that's all cool for each one. But when we then take a step back and we think about it from the Lorebeard perspective, where we're looking at everything trying to be one big cohesive Warhammer world, which we all know is a complete waste of time, but we do it nonetheless. We enjoy this. That's when we then go, they've made a change in this edition. And that means that certain maps are wrong, or perhaps this map is wrong, or a choice has been made. What does this mean? And there's going to be a couple of those that pop up in this stream. And again, I don't personally really care whether it's one thing or another. I have very much strong opinions for my own games, but when it comes to what Games Workshop does, whatever they do is theirs. They can go in any direction they want. It's their stuff. It's their playground to play in.
Awesome. So, yeah. A lot of cool things to talk about today. We are going to, of course, do our usual stuff of grabbing super chats to the bath. Yeah. Y'all know the whole spiel. So there is quite a few things to cover. So we're going to go ahead and I think just hop on into it. By the way, thank you, Short 9000 for the 32 months and Hawk Oddly for the 52 months. Good Lord, that's a long time. Thank you. I appreciate the continued support. WPK, Donnie Delgado Art Station has Estalia plus Nippon Concepts plus Oni Shogunate Fan Project. That's a lot of stuff. Warhammer maps by Plan Janusa DeviantArt. Opinions on... I feel like this is almost like a shotgun of information fired in my general direction. Andy, are you frozen? Uh-oh. We lost Andy. He'll be back in a second. Opinion on Atholithri. I have not played it yet. Oh, they just had a power cut. Oh no. I'll hold the fort. W silenced him. Okay, so Andy, apparently they had a brief power outage. Games Workshop silenced him before he could express his opinions. But I haven't played the new Skaven or the new Vermintide map yet. I want to. I really want to. It's on my to-do list. I'm going to be playing more Vermintide this Thursday, and the group I'm playing with is like reasonably experienced now, so hopefully we can make some time to do it. But yeah, I haven't had the chance to dive into it yet. But that's cool. I'm glad lots of people are working on more crazy stuff. That's very cool and awesome. Jen, playing a village campaign, Archaon wants an alliance, I accept while giggling uncontrollably. Yes, and then you lure him to Pretonia, and then you kill him, and then you become the Ever-Chosen, because that'll totally work out, and nothing bad could possibly happen. Yeah, he'll totally fall for it. I mean, he does fall for it, but you'll totally kill him. He won't manage to get away. That crafty Ever-Chosen. Well, you know what? I'm just going to answer random questions from the chat while we're waiting for Andy. So if y'all have any questions for me in particular, while we're waiting for them, while we're waiting for him to restore power, feel free to fire off your Sotek only questions. Murgler says, I know GW has been clear in saying no vampire counts the old world, but they are pushing hard in removing the old Warhammer Fantasy. Pushing hard and removing the old Warhammer Fantasy battle range from AOS, like they did for Dwarves and High Elves. Yeah, I mean, I am very much of the opinion that I feel like it's only a matter of time before the legacy races return. Now, it could be a long time, because one could make the argument. I've been seeing a lot of weird indicators that I find very interesting that could suggest that second edition Wolfrup is going to focus more on like a Far Eastern theater with like Grand Cathay, Nippon, and Koresh, and the Hobgoblin Khanate. And if they do that, well, then the legacy races aren't really important to what's going on in that part of the world. I mean, that might be a good time I could see for them to like reintroduce Dark Elves, but like, I am and granted, this is just my opinion, but I am kind of expecting them to come back and reintroduce like a legacy faction per edition, and then we might like eventually build back up. But I genuinely think they're going to return all of them eventually, but it's probably going to take time. Let's see. What lore of magic is best for long distance communication? I feel like Andy would probably have a more interesting or experienced opinion on this than I would. But I mean, we know the Skaven have far squeakers, which can communicate over a pretty obscene distance. But I would guess if you're trying to do really long distance communication, I would think you'd either want in a reliable sense, probably a Zir. I imagine the Wind of Heavens would probably be the best one for that. If we ever visit Poland, you want an autograph? Hey, I'll let you know. I don't. I couldn't tell you. Let's see here. Still Rising, thank you very much. How do I feel about the new Cubicle 7 book? I have mixed feelings. Overall, I like the book. I don't think it's a perfect book. I don't think any of their books are perfect, but I think it has a lot of pretty solid strengths to it. It has some. The player's guides are a little weird in my opinion, because the point of a player's guide should be to, communicate information that only the players need. And I feel like the player guides aren't very good about that. Like they tend to have a lot of sidebars dedicated to like adventure hooks, which is not appropriate for a player's guide. Adventure hooks should only be in a GM guide, not a player's guide. So I don't know why there are adventure hooks in those books. But I do think that the elf one is much better than the dwarf one. The dwarf one, I have some pretty serious bones to pick with various decisions they made. I actually just recorded a video that's about 40 minutes of me addressing those concerns. Granted, it's more like there are 4 specific pages that I really think Cubicle 7 needs to change. And I made a big old video about it. Because I submitted a bunch of feedback. Oh, there he is. He's back.
Can I be heard?
Yes, you can.
Oh man, well that was the thing. I've been running out there, I've been fixing fuses, I've been doing all sorts of exciting, crazy things. I'm not sure if my sound will be right though, because I had to completely
you
reset
sound
it.
perfectly fine. You sound,
I'm going to call that a win. I'm going to now sit back and go.
Games Workshop's attempt to assassinate you was
one
very
hell
brief.
of a question to return to.
Yeah, so what I will say that I'm working on a video on this in particular because I want to address this book because overall I feel like it's pretty good as a book. As a player's guide, it's a little weird, but overall it's got some good things. But the God section is a fucking mess. The God section is terrible.
Yeah.
I'll just say very simply. The God section to the Elf Player's Guide is so bad that it actually got me to move my video making schedule around so that I could focus purely on Wolfrup for a little bit. It's that bad.
Yeah. So, obviously, I've got a whole host of opinions that I'm broadly not going to share because nobody wants to know what an ex-producer thinks about a current producer's work. Because it's just unseemly, man. I don't need to be getting into these sorts of conversations. But I will say that I agree wholeheartedly with Sotek that it seems less of a player's guide and more like a brief intro to Elves Part 1, Ulthuan book, Elves and stuff, but a bit more too. Which is great if you're looking for a whole bunch of extra information, but if you're purely looking for a player's guide with a ton of descriptions for how to roleplay and loads of cool careers for elves and loads of stuff that effectively support you as a player, yeah, no. Most of the space isn't dedicated to that. Most of the space is just dedicated to other stuff. And let me also reiterate that the religious section, the God section, is just bad. Now, it's possible, and I'm happy to throw this out there, that Games Workshop have changed a lot of their setting. It's possible that the writers have access to a very different version of how the gods are set up. But that doesn't seem hugely likely because the changes are, in some places, weird.
I would agree if it weren't for the fact that I know exactly what they did. And it's due to a misunderstanding. And I even had someone in someone in the Ratcatchers Discord actually screenshotted the writers talking about the confusion and sent it to me. So that's why.
As in they didn't know what it was.
As in there was confusion about what exactly it meant, so they went with the version they went with, which is not the correct version.
Which is really wrong. Yeah, it's one of those. It's one of those errors that to anyone that knows the elves well, which both of us do, was so glaring, was so obvious that we both went, "What the fuck? What?" Because it's such a change.
Yeah, but don't worry, video coming about that soon, and that's not what this stream is
stuff
about.
that can be covered over in another video, and it's not ones that I'm really going to be discussing on my side because I generally don't dive into what I think of the different Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay books because it's kind of unseemly.
Jen, yeah, playing Village campaign,
wine,
Archaon wants an alliance. I accept while giggling uncontrollably. Yes, because Village was always such a good friend to Archaon. Treated him so well. Cornsheep, idea for an April Fool's stream. What if we can just get a happy fucking ending double Peace Hammer stream? That might, I don't know. I have an idea for April Fool's, but we'll see if it ends up panning out.
Yeah, I mean, there's a really nice April Fool's, Ranald's All Fool's Day, which you can always play with too. But yeah, you're right. Peace Hammer isn't exactly high in the list of many people's priorities. Oh, thanks, Super Orlok.
Yeah, thank you, Super Orlok. Appreciate it, my dude. Hannibal, good evening, gents. I'm currently inhaling enough Kavaz to KO a Manticore on my holidays. I'm very excited to watch this tomorrow when I'm recovered.
See you tomorrow, or see you now if you're watching later. Hi, Hannibal.
Happy drinking. One day I'd love to do this with some AOS maps. Yeah, AOS maps are they're fun, but they frustrate me in a sense because you can tell the way they're designed. How do I say this? You can tell that someone sat down and somebody came to them and said, okay, there is like 3 important locations. Everything else, just make up whatever you want. Go wild. And their maps are very deliberately designed so that you can't get a good understanding of what you're looking at. And a lot of the stuff is like they throw out a lot of places, but there's nothing to really explain what these kinds of places are. and then they add maps that are like kind of adjacent, so you have to get a lot of different books together to stitch together the different maps. And I really wish Games Workshop would just do it themselves, where they would have like the larger zoomed out thing. But AOS, which is something I don't like about it, but I understand why GW does it, of both the timeline and the map are kept deliberately confusing and vague enough that no one can deliberately point to details and be like, oh, this is exactly how this is supposed to work. Or, oh, GW made a mistake here. You can't do that with AOS. Like you can with fantasy. Like you're going to see in this stream, me and Andrew are going to look at things and go, that's not right. AOS is very well designed to shield against that.
Yeah. Because they made mistakes with Warhammer.
Yeah.
And they don't want to duplicate them. No, it's totally understandable.
Darius, idea based off the Koresh stream. Man, you just will not let Faceplaya go. Faceplaya's bodyguard being the biggest, most powerful orcs wearing the flayed skin and hair of elven handmaidens and sisters of Avalord. Their name, the Twisted Sisters. What is this? A drag act? RuPaul's
We're not gonna take it. Oh, man.
Good Lord. Pyrotray. Something my game out of character. Pyrotay, sorry. Something my game out of character in my good aligned party who wanted to be a beast man. So we worked out he was a banded baby found by a cult of Tall. He even saved Karl Franz himself. Could this happen to canon? Yes.
Yeah, I see no reason that could
not even that much of a stretch.
As we discussed over in the Morgar stream, the Beastmen are definitely leaning in one direction when you take a look at what they are, where they come from, the gods that they focus upon. But the Warhammer world is filled with shades of grey and examples of people that go in directions that you wouldn't expect them to. Now, the obvious ones are, hey, all the humans fall to chaos, don't they? Yeah, but so do elves, so do dwarves, so do a whole host of others. And on the flip side, occasionally there are stories of weird redemption or unlikely characters who find gods that you would never expect them to do so. And they make for some great stories for roleplay or possibly for a novel. And this spans right from the very beginning of the Warhammer novels right through to the very last ones. But there's always those little grey areas where you can never be quite certain where it's going to go. Having said that, though, by the time we hit the end times, you tend to find it turns very black and white.
Yeah, and I mean, hell, there's so many different ways you can play it too. Of like a Tallite priest being like, "He's not a beast man; he's a blessed child of Tall. How dare you call him a beast man?" And yeah, WPK earlier, because I don't know if Andy saw this before his power cut.
I didn't,
but posting about there's all sorts of crazy fan projects going on right now on art stations and DeviantArts and all sorts of other stuff. Vermintide is doing elf ruins settlements right now, which is really, really cool.
Cool.
And I need to do the new one.
WPKM, if you're over in my Discord channel, if you could at me over there and give me those, that'd be amazing, because that means I could go take a look at them, because I am more than happy to riff on ideas that other people drop when it's for my own fan stuff. I'm not so happy doing that, obviously, if I was to do it professionally, because then you're creating something new and you don't want to be accidentally stealing someone else's stuff.
WPK says, Andy, you diss GW for not knowing their own lore, but you oppose the wiki. Are you against consolidating all Warhammer Fantasy lore in one all-encompassing compendium?
No, I'm actually quite the opposite. I don't oppose the wiki. I'm a great fan and supporter of the wiki. I just don't think the wiki is a reliable source. That's not quite the same thing. The wiki is obviously created by fans, and the fans miss stuff and sometimes add their own stuff, particularly when there's been more than one example of, I know I've created lore as a fan, made it, built it, published it online somewhere, and then I've seen it arrive in a wiki. And I've gone, well, I know that's not true, because I made that bit up. And I definitely didn't put that in a book. And a single example of this was the planetary system for the Warhammer world and all the solar system around it. I did a piece of work that never got picked up. It got turned into an article that was sitting over on Wikipedia, which, not Wikipedia, pardon me, the Warhammer wiki, just wasn't based on anything other than what was at that point unofficial fan work. And because it bugged me it wasn't in there, I added it to Empire's Shadows so that it became real. So that article is on Wiki inspired me to add the thing that I never really added in the first place and put it back in. So there's a page in the calendar section at the back of Enemy in Shadows, that's the first part of the Enemy Within campaign, that lists out all of the planets that you can find inside the Warhammer system according to the elves.
Yeah, and the thing that I'll add is that the wiki, they have a little bit of a history of what things they choose to add can sometimes cause quite a bit of confusion, as we saw with kind of like the Astalia and Talea map situation, which a lot of people thought was an official thing because that information wasn't as clearly communicated as it probably should have been. Which I'm not taking sides, to be very clear, but if you go on certain parts of like the Warhammer Fantasy subreddit, the people who work on the wiki and the people who are blaming the wiki for the change of the map they are having some heated debates right now.
Things happen, eh?
Yeah, but
yeah, the other thing I won't. Don't, pardon me, you're not done.
All that to say that the I would love, and there's a site that's kind of doing this, but I don't want to say where it is because I don't want them to potentially get in trouble. But there are places on the internet where people are trying to bring together all of the primary sources and make them free or easy to access for readers. That is
naughty.
Yes, naughty, but that is what the all-encompassing compendium should be. If GW was not stupid, they would do it themselves, but unfortunately, they're stupid. So they don't.
There's an obvious sale there.
Yeah, if they would just have like an online library where you could just read all of various editions, that would be great. But GW doesn't want to do that.
People would subscribe. So I was commissioned at the tail end of Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 2nd edition to write an Empire encyclopedia. This is a book that never happened because just as I received the documents for that commission, I was also commissioned for an elf book at that time. I was commissioned for a couple of other things. Games Workshop went in a different direction, decided they no longer wished to publish their own roleplay games, and they sold the license off to another company. But during the planning stages of that, there was going to be an entire book, approximately, 2008, 9, somewhere around there, where we were going to go through pretty much the entirety of the Empire and break it down province by province, village by village, town by town, demon by demon, myth by myth, and make a big, huge, chunky book that was just filled with miscellanea from the Empire. And it was honestly going to be one of the funnest books to be involved with, because the plan of it wasn't just to create all of this, it was to siphon everything that had been created into it, meaning that we would have a really solid, cool source for all of those fun locations that you might have read about, and say the Matthias Dullman books, or Gotrek and Felix, or perhaps you'd read some obscure novel, or maybe the Black Hearts, or maybe you'd read something else. All the locations you saw in there would have had a lovely little entry, a lovely little bit of detail, something that made you go, ooh, that's fun, and a bunch of maps and other little pictures all the way through too. But that book never happened, I think for obvious reasons, because the actual spec for it was far larger than I think the number of pages would have allowed.
Stellar Rising. Oh yeah, we already did that.
Yeah, we done that one.
Sean Schultz, what was one thing that made me happy with the map? I mean, the fact that Talea and Astalia has stuff in it, great. The fact that we have actual Astalian factions for the first time ever, great. The High Elves having a realistic presence in the old world, great.
Yep.
There's a lot of good things. A lot of silly things, but a lot of good things too.
Yeah, I love the map. And for all I am almost certain to rant about certain parts of the map during this stream, I don't think it's going to be a proper rant. It will be an affectionate, really? Is that the choice you went with? But I love the map. And there's not just one or two things that make me happy about it. There's loads, right down to the fact that it exists. Now, when we were doing the stream about the new Total War mod, it's not that new, it's been going for a long time, about the Hinterlands of Koresh, I made a comment near the end of it about the map. And I said it's very simple as a style, very basic. And that's one of the things I actually love about it. It's a super accessible style for the map. And it may look look, particularly when you zoom out, it looks absolutely gorgeous. But if you zoom into it, look into how those rivers are built, how those mountains are built. It's also a map that almost anyone at home could duplicate if they wanted to do so, particularly if they're got any skill at all with digital software. So I love it for loads of reasons, but the biggest reason I love it is that it exists at all, because this is something that Games Workshop could easily have done what they normally do in the past, which is brush it under a carpet, add a map to each book, and then it will be basic and often contradict the other maps, and then just move on. That's not what we've got here. We've got an attempt to create a unified vision for everything that sits behind what they're building for the old world, and I don't just champion that. I absolutely applaud it. And yeah, they've made some interesting choices, and yes, they've also made some changes, including some changes that I wish they hadn't made, but that nevertheless doesn't change the fact that what they've done rocks, because they're attempting to at least give one solid vision for what their game world is going to be.
Yeah, another big thing that I'll add, a huge thing why I will always love this map, and I will be its personal white knight until the day I die, is that it's free online for everyone to just look at and have fun with. You don't have to buy any books. You don't have to it's not behind a paywall. It's literally just a free piece of content. Which from GW is
awesome. I'm just busy laughing at what Pyrote said there. I'll bounce out. This is take a shot for every loads from Andy. I do say loads a lot. And then I'll bounce out by buying 20 copies of Dark Deeds to destroy Andy's liver. Go for it. I am just drinking standard old Pepsi today. So yeah, no particular alcohols. Although if someone wants to buy Dark Deeds and drop it in the comments, I'll add some. I'm sure I've got some in here somewhere. So yeah, feel free.
Any named treasure maps in Warhammer? Let's see. There's Mad's map, which is a treasure map. That I think, if I recall correctly, that pops up in either the Storm of Magic or Monsters Arcanum book, I think.
There's loads, and I wish I'd been put in the spot.
There's a lot. Yeah, there's a lot. They show up in books a lot.
Yeah, and they pop up in White Dwarf articles, often being fought over for one reason or another. Warhammer Quest drops another couple as well, where they say, oh, the treasure map that you find when you're down pub. Yeah, there's lots of treasure maps, but I can't think of any named off the top of my head, which is really bugging me. But yeah, there's quite a lot of them around.
Nitantal, it seems like Spain / Australia has a thing for bulls, but that's been taken by the Chaos Wars. How's that going to work out? Let me counter-offer you.
All. They'll just keep on going.
Yeah, let me counter-offer you by saying, the Chaos Dwarfs have a bull god. That's weird. Aren't Minotaurs bulls? How are they going to handle that? The answer is they'll not worry about it.
Yeah, totally. Much like Ostland has got the bulls as a core symbol, they've got a god called Guvaur. Guvaur is a bull-headed god known for his stubborn nature. Yeah, they're just going to continue along certain core themes, and the idea of bulls being at the core of much of a stallion, let's say, games is not a surprise.
It's just gonna probably be another unique new type of bull.
Yeah, totally.
Hooray. Tyran, I have an interest in human nations with formative / significant relationships with non-human neighbors like Ethel or Bretonia, Empire and the Katazan Court, Cathain, Ogre Kingdoms. Do you think there's enough for a podcast there? Yes.
Yeah, easy. I mean, in fact, there's enough for a podcast about each relationship.
Yeah, each one of those could be its own Lorebeards. Easily.
I would basically refer you over to our Fishmen or alternatively Dragon Ogre streams to show just how much there's an enormous wealth of content in what looks like a very small topic when you look at all the actual official mentions. The Dragon Ogres in particular is almost nothing, and that turned out to be a great stream.
Yeah, and it's not just because we're long-winded. It's because there was actual good stuff to talk about there. I said not just. Anything orcs or goblin related, cheers, good day. On the map, yes, there is orc and goblin stuff that we're actually going to talk about because there's some weird things on this map that make me curious. All right, anyway, that's all that stuff, so it's time to get into it.
Let's map.
All right, so
put on our map shoes.
There's a lot of places we could start. So, Andy, do you have a preferred area or location?
So I'm mostly going to be discussing on my bitchy side concerning the obvious Empire, Kislev areas. So let's leave those mostly to the end and dance around all those other cool, exciting areas where I'm going to have far fewer opinions, largely because there's not as much on the map. There's far fewer maps in those areas for Games Workshop to potentially contradict. So I don't have the big issues, but there are a few I'm aware of, having not looked at the most recent updated one. There are a few I'm aware of that I'm going to almost certainly raise my eyebrow and go, really?
So, okay. I'll put it to you this way. Do you want to start with a new update positive or a new update negative?
Let's start positive, because I like to start positive.
All right, let's go down to Estalia.
Hey, Estalia!
Estalia is now much better looking. For the last time that me and Andy had a chat about it, they actually fixed Estalia, which is very funny. Not only now, sadly, it's a lot emptier than the one we had with I believe it's Alfred Nunez Jr.'s map.
It was.
But they did get rid of all the fan content. So everything on here, Games Workshop double checked it apparently and said, okay, this is our stuff or it's new stuff. They were able to tie it back to something.
If you didn't know already, there's Alfred, Mad Alfred as he's often referred to online, has been creating maps for Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay since the first edition. And he's also been writing for the game since the first edition of Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. I hired him to write on Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 4 as well, because he's got a great love for dwarfs. And he has been creating material for his games and just for fun for decades. And a great enormous swathe of that can be found online. Indeed, lots of maps that you'll find online are based upon Mad Alfred's version of the Warhammer world. But it's worth noting, it is a fan-created version. It's his version of Estalia or his version of the Empire. And it's filled with stuff that he's made up or friends of his have made up or a host of others have made up for other fan productions, and they've been all collated together in a really cool way. But they're not Games Workshop's creations. These are creations that other people have made. And the Estalia that they had up was one of Mad Alfred's maps. They thought, I presume, that it was one of Games Workshop's maps, but it absolutely wasn't, meaning that it was absolutely proliferated with extra details that really had come from nowhere other than fans. And that's cool. If they're acknowledging that, perhaps they even sent a nice little note saying, thanks, Mad Alfred, you rock, we're going to take what you've already done. But no, that's not what they've done. They've gone, oops, and they've erased it all. This isn't the first time this has happened. I'll give you another example all the way back in Sigmar's Heirs for Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 2nd edition, a book by Anthony Reagan. Now, Anthony used a whole host of locations in that, which also came from fan sources, and it caused all manner of issues with the fans who had created some of those locations, because they were like, why aren't I credited? Why are these things in here? I made this up for my games. Why are these things there? And that caused, in turn, a clamp down for the 2nd edition of the game, where it was going to be only official sources that were used under any circumstances, which is one of the reasons why I built my master map, to ensure that everything that I created on the map side would only be stuff that had come from Games Workshop sources, or alternatively have been created afresh by writers for Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay or Warhammer with later books, or maybe the novelist or whatever else. But it would be official stuff only. And look at what happened to poor old Estalia the second that they put the official locations in. Almost nothing. Now, to me, this is actually a bit sad because there's a bit more than there was. I mean, the Brasco Mountains are actually in there, which is good because they vanished in one version.
They were gone in the prior version.
Sotek and I messaged about that one. We're like, where the fuck are the mountains?
Yeah, where'd they go?
They've gone! But they arrived back in again, so clearly we were in a versioning process. And we do have some extra details here, but there's not very much. It is worth noting, though, that Games Workshop has, in multiple products, added details for Estalia. There's various novels that drop there, like, say, Fell Cargo. That drops by there quite a bit. It's also worth noting, though, that version of Estalia is a bit like a jungle in places. And it's not really the Estalia that you would expect. Or, your open plains of Spain, for example, very much not obviously in evidence in parts of that book. But there are many places that have been added, none of which are on this map. So clearly, they have decided that they're just going to basically tabula rasa it and then add their own details on top.
Yeah, but we're going to look at a couple of cool details that they have added, which is that The mountains look great. Like they've done a nice thing of like we've got the big old mountains that we're used to, a lot of really healthy forest. We have like a lot of classics like the Isles of the Siren, a lot of settlements you might recognize. What's interesting to me is that Estalia is split up between two kingdoms. So you have the major kingdom of Magritta, which has this symbol of a bull with laurels and a crown atop its head, which is very interesting. And Magritta is traditionally kind of like the big bad of Estalia. I'm curious what they're going to do with that. But around the Bay of Quietude, we also have the Fortress of the Moon, Fortress of the Sun. There's a story there. I don't know what it is, but I really want to know what's going on. That jumps out at me as something very interesting.
Yeah, I've written about Estalia quite a few times, in particular, for example, with all the Myrmidia material that I added to the second edition of the game. And the general idea for the Estalian kingdoms that was typically bounced around behind the scenes was it's much like the Tilian city-states, but it's kingdoms instead. So there's a whole bunch of kingdoms in Tilia, and this version kind of has 2. So,
yeah, well, they had 5 on Mount
Yeah,
Alfred's
they had more
version.
before, but it's now down to 2.
There might be more
that's
later.
A choice.
Yeah, there might be more later.
I did a big map of let's see if I can find it online while I'm kicking around in the background. So I'm about to go mute in a second. But I did a big map that was a mosaic map that I did as a piece of fan work, but only used official locations for Games Workshop. And it was hilarious because there was almost nothing to include at that point when I made that map. But I'm pretty sure it might have had more than 2 kingdoms. I'm going to go check that while you look around the rest of the area.
Well, so now what's interesting is they've added one interactable location in Estalia, which is that on Fool's Point Rocks, you can actually interact with Porto Real or Porto Real. And when you click on it, we get given its close proximity to the lawless Isle of Sartosa, the Sea Guard maintain a heavy presence in the waters around Fool's Point. Their warships ensure the safety of elven trading vessels as they pass through pirate-infested waters. One of the things that we'll, of course, be talking about quite a bit here is that the High Elf presence in the old world has been ramped up to 11, as opposed to back in old Warhammer Fantasy, where it was kind of non-existent, which is great because it makes the High Elves feel more like how they're described, which is more of kind of the world police force. Of course, we got the Kingdom of Babali up here, which is next to another one of the new interactions, which is one of the new active High Elf settlements, which is the Silent Isle. So the Silent Isle is just off the coast of Bordelot, and it's a fully functioning High Elf outpost.
Yeah, I love that.
And we get the Silent Isle secreted away within a walled harbor. The docks of the Silent Isle house the High Elves' largest standing army outside of all Ulthuan, and the vast number of warships that are needed to transport them to battle. No merchant vessels of any kind, even those from Ulthuan, are permitted entry through the walls of the harbor, and instead are forced to take their wares to other ports in the region. That is super interesting.
Yeah, it's a super cool place, and I particularly like it if it isn't in the End Times version of Warhammer. This is the sort of location that I love in the hope that they are willing to use and potentially destroy it, because that makes it for a dynamic potential location and also speaks to the loss of power that the High Elves will slowly but surely face as the next great war against chaos arrives and the inevitable conflicts that arise from that hit them hard. So this is a location that I think is brilliant, tells a story also to what the elves used to be and what they are no longer are in the modern version of Warhammer. So I hope this place gets sunk.
Yeah, it does seem like it's going to be a pretty major faction because only the pretty major things are interactable on the map. But Silent Isle is very cool. We also have Tor Martel, which is also an interactable icon. Also, their faction banner is very cool because it's
they're pretty cool.
I don't know what this creature is. I don't know if it's a Kelpie or if it's some kind of.
It's sort of is, isn't it?
It's like
looks
a
like a
horse.
Melusine. Is that a Melusine? Let me just double check.
Tor Martel says the port of Tor Martel is a bustling trading post that sees goods flow between the old world and the shores of Ulthuan. Its fleets once protected the seas along the coastline of Bretonnia from pirate activity and Norscan raids, but in recent years, the number of patrolling vessels has dwindled significantly, causing raiders and pirates alike to grow bold in their absence.
Yeah, it's worth noting that with the standard background before the old world, the High Elves basically rule the waves. They are very easily perceived as an analogue for the Great British Empire, but they're worse in that they not only rule the waves, if anybody moves out with sight of the coast, they get sunk. That's anyone. They have no roots around this. So if you happen to be a Marienburger explorer and you are caught by a high elf vessel, they will sink you. That'll be the same for Bretonnians. That'll be the same for the Empire, or indeed any other faction. There are no treaties in place for anyone to cross the ocean. The only way to get across there is to basically gamble it against the high elves. And trust me when I say they are terrifying on the ocean. So this is, I think, a good part of the storytelling as well, because as we eventually reach the end times, the High Elves no longer have the same dominance. They've made some treaties. They've allowed people to trade over to Laverne. Things have changed. But this, at this point at least, is 100% accurate. And I really love the idea that the elves are still out there sinking folk all over the place.
Yep. We also have, very interesting here, we have a new High Elf active city that is on the actual coast of Bretonnia, in the Kingdom of Lyonesse. We have Tor Solil, which says, one of the few spheres of influence that the High Elves have on the shores of the old world, the port enclave of Tor Solil is nested within the lands of Lyonesse. Given the vast quantities of elven wine and finely crafted garments imported from Ulthuan, this port is well defended from external threats by its own garrison and the Knights of Bretonnia.
Yeah, this is a standing situation with the High Elves, in that, particularly with the rise of Finubar and the opening up of the elves across the world to other civilizations, trade opened up not long after, and they pretty much control it entirely by themselves, cornering the market by not allowing anyone else to do the high sea part. And they build enclaves. They have places that are entirely run by and ruled by the High Elves. And when they're moving into an existing city, like for example, Marienburg, they often make deals with those existing cities. But in this particular instance, we are at a time before the great deal between Marienburg and the High Elves have been made. So this is not at the point when the High Elves and Marienburg are singing happy songs together. Quite the opposite. And they will sack the place. Good times. Yeah.
I actually quite enjoy this in particular because it makes me really excited for the development of Bretonnia, because of the fact that Bretonnia is going to have a lot more obvious elf influence from both the mysterious kind of asshole Azrai over in Athel Loren, who are very, very not fond of talking to anybody, but now we have a really strong high elf influence in a lot of parts of Bretonnia. And if you go back and read old Bretonnia lore, like 6th edition and the Knights of the Grail book, like there's kind of this weird thing when you're reading through it where you would expect the Bretonnians to really know about elves, but instead the book's like, yeah, a Bretonnian would see an elf and be like, I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
Like, that's a fae. And you're like, how the fuck do the Bretonnians not know what an elf is?
I was always disappointed with the Bretonnian books because of their insular nature and the fact that we have ourselves a faction in the old world that constantly ranges across the old world and beyond because of their questing knights, because of their impetus to find the grail, because of the various stories that they create. Yet they are given these backward insular views from top to bottom that often don't match the things that they themselves would have faced. And the High Elves in particular have long been an extraordinary influence on their coasts and their surrounding territories. And it's been forgotten again and again and again. And I really like that at this time in the old world, they've gone, oh, wait a minute, that doesn't quite make sense. Let's make more sense of it. So this is big thumbs up from me.
Yep. And then we have this new one as well over at the Dragon's Maw, which is a nasty set of islands. It's well known amongst the sea captains that only the desperate and foolhardy seek to navigate the mist-shrouded waters of the Dragon's Maw. Yet the High Elves do not fear the perils of the sea, and for many centuries, the Sea Guard have garrisoned warriors within a glittering tower perched atop one of the many razor-sharp rock formations that make up the Dragon's Maw.
Yeah,
that's too cool. The Dragon's Maw has been a thing for a really long time. The fact that there's a big glittering elf tower in what's considered insta-death place for most boats, awesome. I like that.
Yeah, I can only agree. And if we take a look at the time involved, so this is approximately 250 years before the big boom of the world, when everything goes wrong. In 250 years, all of these can be ruins. if we wish. All of these can be something completely different. So if you're playing Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay in the modern era, you can look at these and go, well, they could be something really quite different. These could be locations that I could visit in a very different way as elven influence wanes more and more, yet their desperate desire to have dominance in many respects increases. So yeah, I really, really like that one.
Yep. Since we're apparently just doing the high elves, let's keep going with the high elves.
Why not? Let's do a high elf tour.
Yeah, we have because I actually haven't seen these yet because these are in the newest update. Is the interactable high elf symbols? So we have another one up here near the Shrouded Isle, which is just off the coast from Larlorn and the Wasteland. And it says the Shrouded Isle, garrisoned by the Lothern Sea Guard. The Shrouded Isle and its surrounding waters were once a bastion of safety and free passage, kept safe by sleek elven warships. However, in recent decades, sightings of the Sea Guard vessels have decreased, and the number of Norse and wolf ships passing through the region has been steadily growing. So that's interesting to me because that's the second time we've gotten indications that, hey, the High Elves used to be a strong force here, but they're not anymore, and now bad forces are building up.
Yeah, they're clearly building up to the next big incursion of chaos. And I particularly like seeing the old wolf ships be mentioned again. Hopefully we'll get ourselves dragon ships and king ships as well. But it's worth noting that the wolf ship as a name used to be for the Empire only. So the Empire core ship of the line was called a wolf ship. So it's interesting to see that they're marking Norskin as wolf ships at this particular point. The wolf ship as a design will become a core component of the Empire Navy in the mid 2500s. So interesting use of names there because that's not one we'd normally drop on Norskins.
Yep, and once we're done with the high elf section, we'll do super chat stuff again because I do
sure.
see those.
Perfect.
All right, down here we have a new high elf city just off on an island just south of Myrmidons, which is a perfect place to put one in the Bay of Rex here. We have Tulshanar. Positioned at the mouth of the Black Gulf, the fortress of Tulshanar provides the High Elves with a staging post from which they can control the number of orc and goblin craft trying to set sail from the Badlands for the Border Princes, as well as keep an eye on the movements of dwarven vessels launching from Badak Var.
Yeah, I like this a lot, and I could feel the tension with Barak Var because Barak Var is very close to here, just further into the big, well, what we call it, a gulf here, I suppose, the Black Gulf, sitting at the top with Barak Var. And I particularly like that the Black Gulf has been given a bit of politics in a way that previously had been left to, yeah, there's Tillians over there, there's possibly some border princes, maybe, but the border princes have always been very poorly defined in previous editions. But here we have clear tension. Now, it looks like it's quite some distance away because it is all the way back to Barak Var, which is sitting right in, if we go all the way up the Black Gulf to the top there, it's just sitting underneath the Varenka Hills, which, by the way, I'm delighted to see. I have something to talk about that one because I had to add those into a map because every other map missed them. But we've got the Varenka Hills, and there will be massive tension in that water.
You can even click on the Varenka Hills.
Yeah, I love the fact that they're there. The Varenka Hills, I added in on a map of the Border Princes because they have been mentioned in a couple of locations, but never added to the map. And I thought it was absolutely essential because we have ourselves a dwarf fortress here. And explaining some of the reasons for why the dwarves chose this to be their primary port was a core component of that. And the Varenka Hills, which have been mentioned, for example, by Mad Alfred in one of his sources, it was absolutely essential they got added, and the small trees. The map, actually, that you're seeing here is almost identical to the map that I made for the Renegade Crowns book a bajillion years ago. So really nice to see those. But it does have one thing on it that really annoys me, but we'll get to that later. Really bugs me, by the way.
I might know what it is, but we'll get...
Oh boy, does it bug me.
All right, and then we have Toran Rock. So this one is actually pretty exciting. As you can see, this tower is burning, and that's because all these elves, they're fucking dead. They died in one of the newest books. So Tor Rock, which was right here on the Black Gulf as well, hidden in a shrouded valley within the Dragback Mountains. Tor Rock once provided the High Elves with a bastion, which survived until 2276, which is the starting year of the Old World. The garrison of Tor Rock was slaughtered by a legion of Nehakaran undead led by High Priest Ashertak in his search for a missing Tomb King, which is the shenanigans of the and you can see here Tor Rock. So this High Elf shield was not interactable until this most recent update, but Tor Rock was. So it says, for centuries, the elven outpost of Tor Rock overlooked the Black Gulf. The reasons for its abandonment remain something of a mystery. And then when you pick up the Tomb King Arcane Journal, it's revealed that the Tomb Kings attack it, and the elves put up a noble fight, but they're ultimately defeated by a big old army of Tomb Scorpions that come burrowing up from beneath them. And there's nowhere for them to go, and it gets bad.
Yeah, and we have to put this into context of what it means, because it's super easy to say, oh, they've just created a nice little conflict and we have seen the loss of the High Elves in this particular area. But now think of what that means. This location has probably been here for thousands of years. Mm-hmm. And it's just recently been lost. This is huge. This is massive in terms of the political effect that it would have back in Ulthuan, where Tor Anrock, that has been defending this particular part of the old world pretty much for ages, has been lost. And that's super fun. Or alternatively, maybe it's something that has been reclaimed by one of the Phoenix Kings at some point and only been recently re-garrisoned. There's lots of different stories it could tell, but often when it's with the elves, the stories that they tell are stories of age and waning empire and things being lost. So it's very likely that this is an old location that's very recently been sacked.
Yeah, and I will say that I do think Games Workshop is so far doing a pretty good job with like the intrigue that could build of that. The Tomb Kings took them out in kind of like a lightning assault, so nobody really knows what happened to them, which adds like a fun level of like who done it. And you can kind of feel the tension between the dwarfs and the High Elves, in that the High Elves used to have 2 ports guarding the Black Gulf. Now they only have 1, which means that the dwarfs of Baldakvar's power is going to rise, their influence in the area. And then, of course, the Tomb Kings are actually expanding north very aggressively.
Very possibly their influence will actually drop, because the greenskin influence will increase.
That's very true too.
Because they're no longer getting policed in the way they used to be. So yes, the loss of the elves is perhaps a loss for all the dwarves also, in a way that they would never admit.
Yeah, and Grom has not happened yet, correct?
No, it won't happen for a long time yet.
Yeah. So that's also the fun build up there of, as the High Elves are losing these influence, you could see how this leads to eventually a Grom situation.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Let's get caught up on Super Chat stuff here. Bifocal King, thank you very much. Good evening, gentlemen. It's my birthday, turning 24. Very nice, and glad to spend this watching my favorite pair of Lorebeards. Well, happy birthday to you.
Yes, happy birthday to you. I am also a bifocal king, because I have bifocals here, because I'm old.
I have them because my eyes are bad.
I'm just old. My eyes have decided, I'm giving up now. And, fair enough.
I got you this far.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you've done well, Andy, but it's now time to give up.
I tell you what, I'm going to be that guy. Have you fellas heard about Trench Crusade? Funny you mentioned that.
You should mention that, because the prime mind behind Trench Crusade, Mike Francina, is coming on Inside the Rookery this Saturday at 7 p.m. So go check out Inside the Rookery 7 p.m. to see me chat with Mike alongside Lindsay and Mark Gibbons as well, who has also done art for Trench Crusade. So it's going to be a super cool time. That's 7 p.m. over on Inside the Rookery, and I can't believe that we managed to plug that. Thanks.
Effortless.
You rock.
Okay, thank you so much for the very generous super chat. Thank you.
Yeah, that's astonishing. Thank you.
Question. Hey, never apologize. We always appreciate it. But with the Koresh Stream and how massive Araby is in this map, I've been inspired to make my Araby mostly non-human, like the Ganassi from D&D. What sources do you recommend for me on how elementals work in Warhammer?
Sorry for laughing. Elementals in Warhammer are one of those things that they're a thing.
Yeah. So the only thing I could really say is that the best thing you could probably look at for the direction Warhammer is going would be to check out Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay's Winds of Magic book, and
because that wasn't a Games Workshop book, so it's very possible that they might go in a different direction themselves. It's a tough one to call on that one.
I'd also recommend the I think it's a good book to look at for ideas and stuff. Also, the Monstrous Arcanum, if you can find a PDF version, it is what introduced the Incarnate Elementals, which have proven pretty popular.
Yeah.
And GW has leaned back into them. So the Incarnate Elementals kind of seem to be we're kind of getting I'm gonna put it this way. In Old Hammer, a lot of the time when you would see elementals, they were just kind of like genies, gens, creature
fire elemental. It was
fire
just an elemental. Yeah,
golem type stuff, all that things. And then as we got into like 8th edition stuff, someone or the Monsters Arcanum came in and said, what if elementals were just like physical embodiments of the winds of magic? So like there is a fire elemental, but it's Akshi, and there's a lesser one and a big one. And everyone went, oh, that's cool. And then Warhammer blew up. But
Dreadfleet.
Yeah,
go to Dreadfleet. In Dreadfleet, they've got a clean example of an Arabian who's using elementals to power their ship. So that would give you at least an idea of how it could manifest in an Arabian fashion. So go to Dreadfleet of all sources.
Yeah, and I just kick around all the different books. But like generally speaking, the easiest thing is think there are 8 elemental incarnates, which is the big scary monsters version, but there's also 8 lesser elementals, which is more like probably you could think of it as like almost a monstrous infantry version. And just think about all the different ways the winds can manifest, which is a lot.
Think about how demons manifest with a greater demon, a lesser demon, a steed, and a beast, or some sort of swarm.
Yeah,
and if you build it up like that, you're going to get it relatively easy. The greater demon is the incarnate element. The lesser demon is the equivalent of some sort of just standard elemental that you might find. And then there'll be other versions of other things too. Then you mix in various jinn and the rest, and we're on pretty much fire.
Kiss, Mary, Kill, Greases, Throt, and Gel. What in the absolute fuck? I need some out-of-context audio clips to blackmail you with. You can't blackmail me. I have no shame. Man, that's a horrid list.
Imagine kissing Greases. Holy crap. So Greases is rich. Let's marry him. Throt, oh man. Kiss Gelt. I'm going to give him the kiss of death, but I'm going to kiss him and I'm going to kill Throt.
Yeah, I think I would probably agree, because I feel like if I did anything else with Throt, I would die horribly.
Yeah, I mean, he just has to die. I don't want it to be that way around, but you kind of have to.
And Greases, you marry and then immediately divorce.
And take it for half his money.
Yeah, take it for half. You'll be incredibly wealthy. Don Man, hello fellas. Doing some background for my Vampire the Masquerade character. Confirmed that not just Warhammer Wiki has issues. Regina Blake Page, she was in a relationship with Victoria Ash until Victoria left London in 1880. Victoria's page says she arrives in London in the 1890s. Yeah.
So, Dino Man, back in the day, I used to do an awful lot of vampires. I used to actually run a website called knight.com. That was a long time ago. It was filled with loads of cool stuff. And much like Warhammer, I was somewhat obsessive in terms of how I dealt with it. I owned every book that White Wolf produced. Everyone. All of them. And at that point, there wasn't really the concept of a wiki, but there most certainly was the concept of people writing within that world and getting it wrong. And by about the halfway mark of the World of Darkness, they started contradicting themselves again and again and again, particularly through the 2nd edition into the revised edition. So the fact that the wikis get it wrong is no great surprise, because not even the writers could get it right. This is loosely par for the course. And if you're on any fan site that is dedicated to any large fandom, you're going to find things that have been inputted wrong, or alternatively, the world itself contradicts other parts of it. So yeah, this is just how it works.
2000 ads. Which greenskin characters do you expect in Total War, the old world? I mean, they've already revealed a couple of them. Like we know that we got Wasp Spinecracker, who's building up to be a pretty big bad. I am guessing, because one thing that's interesting about this map is they actually give you little hints about what's to come, and you'll notice Corone is burning. So I'm guessing Corone is going to be sacked and probably fall to the Greenskins, led by Spinecracker, because the current king is King Luna Orcslayer, and he's pretty old. Luna Orcslayer's been kicking around for him, and he's going to die, because the new king is gonna be this nerd. Where is he? Gaston. Sir Cecil Gaston the Worm Slayer. If they are going to follow the original storylines they set up, which I think they will,
I think so.
When
we all know that no one fights like Gaston.
Yeah, when King Lewin dies, the event of the Black Grail is going to go down, or the False Grail. The Affair of the False Grail is going to kick off, and after the Affair of the False Grail, the way it resolves is good old Gaston here eventually makes his way back to Bretonia, and he ends up resolving matters, which is going to be a mess for Bretonia, and I'm actually really excited to see it portrayed.
Yeah, I really hope it is portrayed, because it's a cool story.
Yeah, good. And they are setting up for it, because if you go to Lucien, who's in charge? Maldred. And Maldred is the guy who takes over for the False Grail. Because they say, under the charismatic rule of Duke Maudre de Moussillon, the region is seemingly reclaiming lands. It's like, oh, they're doing so well. Darius Rose, a fist fight between you two and me versus a dozen goblins. Wait.
Goblins will beat me every time.
We are Berserker Frenzy, thinking they are... Listen, a dozen goblins, that's too many goblins per person. I don't...
Yeah, way too many. One goblin would probably kill us with ease. They've been fighting their entire lives. Yeah, trouble.
Yeah, goblins they're really fucking nasty. I would never want to fight a goblin. It's not on my to-do list. Do you have any specific hopes for the Beastmen Ales? I don't know if that's supposed to be
Age
AOS.
of Legends?
Yeah, I don't know if that's supposed to be Age of Sigmar or if you're asking about Old World.
If you could clarify that in the comments, we'll watch out for it, because I'm not quite sure what you're asking for there.
Yeah, either Nivel or Gnevel. Yeah, I'll keep an eye out for that, for your clarification comment.
Yeah, quite. I'm looking.
Nateto, how do Norskins with their longboats compare to high elf literal dragons and mages, dwarf dreadnoughts, human-like ships? They don't. They're good. A, there's a lot of them. B, they rely a lot on stealth and surprise lightning raids.
Yeah, if you've ever played the Old Man of War game, there was a very simple Norse fleet in that, and it was basically your long ships, your dragon ships, and your king ships. The Norse way of fighting was row as fast as possible or sail as fast as possible to the opposing ship, then board, because they were crazy mental in combat. But beyond that, they were pretty useless. They were super fun to play with, and I'm not saying that they're as bad as, say, halflings or goblins in Blood Bowl, but they were kind of close. They were really bad at it. The elves, by comparison, seriously kicked ass, incredibly fast, incredibly sharp, really good magic, supported by dragons of all things flying through the air, and their dragon ships would just fly across the ocean, cut through everything in their way, and then come out the other side. They do not fare very well, and if we're just talking numbers, one set of high elf ships could easily take on an entire fleet of Norse ships. It's one of the reasons the Norse ships are very careful when they come, and when they do come, they tend to either come en masse or hug the coast, so that they can always row back to the coast and get away from any potential elves that may be playing
a lot of
there.
what you see if you actually read lore about Norscan invasions is the Norskins' goal is to attack a vulnerable target and get the hell out of there before anyone that could mount a actual defense shows up. Because if somebody actually shows up, they're gonna get their asses kicked, and they know that. Like, they are a hit and run culture a lot of the time. That being, and like, even when you have like large Norscan groups, Norska doesn't tend to do very well in naval engagements. That is not their strong suit.
Absolutely. The Norse do very well in general, because they're very good at what they do, and their ships, their clinker-built ships, are better than, say, the Standard Empire, particularly the Bretonnian vessels of the era. They are one of the best seafaring nations as a group. But in comparison to the elves, they do not fare well.
Sari Esco, what's the cross-cultural exchange like between races? For instance, would humans ever try to mimic high elf or dwarven gear and tactics? I mean, you're going to see people try things, just like in our world. Someone's going to see something that works and goes, I wonder if I can adapt that.
Yeah,
that's going to happen.
They're real.
That being said, it's a little more rare to see it from like the elder races. They tend to have a little bit more of a pride thing going on, or they're rather stuck to certain types of like traditions or ideas. Like, you don't see elves picking up black powder for various reasons. But humans, though, like, humans will try anything.
Yeah, we've got two disparate views here. View number one is that the armies all need to be discreet, unique, and have their own telltale signs for the Warhammer battle game. Okay, and for things like Total War. So they are unique, interesting, and do not take on or merge with the other groups. And reflected on the other side, we have the more real world version, i.e. what it would be like on the ground. This is where often the roleplay game adds a lot of grey in what is otherwise a relatively black and white position that is presented inside the war game. So in the real world, yes, there's going to be all manner of arms races and tech increases and attempts to use what other people have in one way or another. And there's also going to be attempts to stop others from using things that they consider to be theirs. Classically, the Skaven, assassinating anyone that finds out about the Skaven or takes any of their stuff.
Hochlanders with their long rifles.
With their long rifles. There's all manner of different in-world reasons for why tech doesn't spread much. But broadly speaking, it would at points and is a core component of telling interesting stories.
Blue's Oyster Cultist. Kypris got removed. There's a Costco on its place.
Okay, so I'm going to call out this one right now so that we have it. So take a look at the map for the Border Princes. We can zoom in here, and right through the very center of it, you've got the Kyprian Road. Now, the Kyprian Road, I named. This is one of my bits on it for multiple GW sources because there was roads that were unnamed in the middle and I needed to have names because I was doing roleplay maps for the area. So I named it after Kypris, which was one of the primary border princes in the area, one of the few that were as old as the Empire. Kypris was just a part of the Border Princes and have been popped up in multiple versions of the lore. So I dropped Kypris on the map, dropped the Kyprian Road and went, that will do. We'll just name it after the local town. In the same way, if we go slightly further down, you've got, I believe, the Trantia Road that goes over the mountains, because I had to name the pass. There's, no, if we go slightly to the left, down over by the Appuccini, and you'll probably find Dark Maiden Pass. Dark Maiden Pass, I also named that one, because all the names had to be named. All the roads had to be named.
So we have Old Dwarf Pass,
the Old Dwarf Pass, that was the Davi Alt Pass in one of the versions of the maps as well. It just means Old Dwarf Pass. And all of these places had to be named.
Oh, there he is, yeah, Dark Maiden Pass.
Dark Maiden Pass is named after one of the, I mean, if you want to use a real world word, it's one of the apostles of Myrmidia, the Dark Maiden. Her name is Namud. And she was from the Southlands with skin so dark that it looked like night. And she had a great enemy called Iscarius. There's a whole story about it. So all of these areas are named after parts of the local world for one reason or another. So the Kyprian Road is there, but there's no Kypris. Arguably the biggest, most important city that has sat in the Border Princes for ages across various versions of the background, and it's gone.
Yeah,
and it's great.
Where is Kypris supposed to be?
Kypris has been moved in different places. It's often been on the Tanadante, and it's often been where, I think it's Malco. Here. I think it's called Malco there, somewhere around there. Yeah, Malco. It's been dropped there as well. Now, Kypris itself has moved around. I don't really care where it goes. I know that's a bad thing to say.
It's just like
as a mapper.
You figure on the road, it's
on the road and
be there somewhere.
The reason the road went all the way across was because halfway along one way took you to Kypris, and if you're coming from the other side, the other half took you there. So both sides of the road were called the Kyprian Road. And it was an ancient road made by some equivalent of Roman/Greek, probably more Grecian style humans from back in the day, and Kypris itself was super, super old. And obviously drawing upon Cyprus as its name. It's not a name that I made up. This is an ancient one from various versions of Warhammer in the past. But yeah, it made me laugh to see that the Kyprian Road was there, but there was no Kypris.
Yeah, they should just add it like right here.
Yeah, just drop it by the Tanadante. That would have been great. It would have made me smile. I mean, it's a proper city.
Maybe it is there. It's just buried under Gaston's banner.
It's a proper city. So we're looking at, if you go with some versions of the background, that'd be a population of about 15,000. If you go with others, it could be up to like 500,000 or more. It's a proper big place in the Border Princes. Imhotep! Yeah. That was the destruction of the elves, I presume. Imhotep!
Andy, you're not old. You just have Bofa. Yeah, Bofa D's. Dinoman, High Elves go seek any fleet they find. How did they miss the two gigantic fleets from Cathay that tried to invade the Southlands? Well, okay, to be fair to the High Elves in that particular instance, A, they might not have cared. B, those came from this direction where there's no High Elves. They came across from the Sea of Dread. And the other one went around the globe and hit Lustria. They hit the western side of Lustria because they didn't know it was there. Which in modern lore does not make sense, but you could easily rewrite the story to just they're invading both locations simultaneously on purpose. But basically they just avoided the elves because there's not as much elf presence in those areas because they're kind of on the wrong sides of the major continents from Ulthuan. David, the Victoria Ash of the 1880s was a Nosferatu who just wanted to screw with the Toreadors.
That'll do.
Sure, why not? Watchdog, would you think some places in the old world have an affinity for certain winds of magic, like potentially Marienburg with Gyron? They should.
Yeah, absolutely. Certain winds gather in certain places, and when I was designing parts of the Warhammer world that we were going to be covering in the first setups for Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 4, doing this was a core component of the design ethic that we were using. So Middenheim, for example, was strongly associated with Gur. And why it was associated with Gur was a core component of what we were building. So when I built up the first description for what would be held in the Middenheim book, that was something that was dropped in there, because it's always important to try and marry the older material from Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, from the first edition. There was a book about Middenheim there, with the newer versions of what Warhammer became. So you take a look at the things that are in one part and you say, what does that mean when you have this as part of the world now? So this is a core component of that. There are winds of magic. They gather in certain places. Where do they gather? And yes, Marienburg would have a lot of Gyron, for example. There'd also be a surprising amount of Hish down there for a variety of reasons. So yeah, there's a lot of potential stories that you could tell. I imagine, though, that as Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay moves on, that ethic will kind of go, because I'm not there saying, make sure we push this Winds of Magic centric understanding of how we view the world. We need to view everything through the lens of the Winds of Magic are real and influence stuff. And the people who live in these places attract certain winds. Which ones, if for example we're discussing Marienburg, would be primarily manifested? And how does that influence the population? I'm not sure that will be carried on with the new Marienburg book when they do it, but if I was doing it, it absolutely would be reflected in there somewhere.
Yep, and then Gnivel or Nivel, the Beastmen Armies of Infamy was what he was referring to, which is the like sub factions. So I suspect for this particular timeline, I imagine they're probably going to just directly steal the Gave spawn from AOS, because it's a good sounding name and Morgur is a really important character. We know one of the special characters is literally the Prophet of Morgur, so like I suspect he's going to have a sub faction revolving around him. And the other one, if rumors are to be believed, which I hope this is true. I want to be clear that I hope this is true, but it's a very strong rumor at the moment, is that there's going to be a pretty significant Famir part added to the Beastmen book, because the Arcane Journals, a lot of what they've been doing is they've been taking old Forge World models and basically re-releasing them as part of the core faction identity. So, like, the Warriors of Chaos got, like, the Warpstone Dragon, the gigantic Chaos Spawn, and the Skin Wolves.
Murworm for the elves.
Yeah, the High Elves got the Murworm. Like, so they're bringing a lot of these big things back and being like, all right, this is part of this faction for the old world. And they had a pretty decent Famir range from Forge World. There's a lot of pretty strong rumors suggesting they were intended to have another wave, because we got the Famir Noble. Well, you had the Famir Warriors and the Bale Fiend were the models that you could get during old fantasy. With the warrior unit, you could build one of the little guys as a noble. So if that's true, then maybe we'll get like Cursed Marshes or Fens or all sorts of other stuff, because that would make me happy.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. There's a ton of Fimmer models out there waiting to be used, so why not use them? And if you want to know more about the Fimmer and what they are, tune in this Sunday.
Yeah, this Sunday
on Lorebeards on Loremaster of Sotek's channel, the channel you're on right now. We will be discussing the Fimmer, their background, where they came from, who even made them. I've actually discussed with its original creator why they are the way they are, and exactly how they became what they became later. So we're going to be discussing all of that and more at 4 p.m. UK time, which is wherever you might be in the world.
great job, Andy. Great job.
Great job. I nailed it.
Yep. Cheesy Sword. OVN released a Fishman mod. It's not a playable faction yet, but you can recruit them from new, unusual location. Oh, that's super cool. I'll have to check that out. Nice. Does Gaston die fighting some sort of brown lion-like beastman atop a castle, falling to his death? Surely not. Surely they could.
Nobody can fall to their death like Gaston.
Hannibal, if you could add one settlement to the map,
Ketris.
What? Ketris would be one that would certainly make a lot of sense.
I'd add Ketris. There's loads of stuff you could add to the map, and I've got a whole bunch of things that I'd love to see on it, but Kypris, just to make sense of the road. Or you could take off the Kyprian road name if you want. I mean, sure, that's one way of resolving the issue, but it's a really nice name, and it's one with a long legacy in Games Workshop's products from the past. So I would rather see it still there rather than remove it. So yeah, I'd add Kypris.
I don't really think there's anything that jumps to my mind right now.
If we go around the map, I'll just call out locations for all of them because I got tons. I'd like to see Mootland's borders change because I really dislike Mootland's borders.
Oh yeah, they got
really dislike.
They got moved notably farther south.
Heavily moved. And interestingly, they moved it over to a location that the studio once told us all the way back in Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 2 was the border. And I pinged back an email saying, every other map shows this border. Are you sure you want me to have what was almost this border, except the Altern Forest wasn't inside the border from Mootland. It was dropped down to the top of, you've got the Blue Reach on the one side, the Ava Reach on the other. Not the Ava Reach, the one that's over on the top. I think that's the Ava Reach. Is that the Ava? Is the Stir?
Yeah, River Ava.
The Ava Reach. Yeah, the Ava Reach at the top. And the border went across there. And I said, it doesn't match any other source. And they said, literally to me, oh yeah, no, our map's wrong. And it's interesting, they've gone back to the map that came from the studio that I got told was wrong. And it amuses me to see this, but it nevertheless makes me a bit sad because it contradicts every other version. You
want to see a funny one where they definitely reference an old map that they shouldn't have referenced? So, Andy, pop quiz. Where is the ancient ruins of Morkheim supposed to be?
Oh God! I'm not even going to start on this one because I'm going to start a freaking rant. Wow.
Well, guess what?
Let's just drop it down and all the way down there.
So for anyone that doesn't know, Morkheim, which is what was the capital of the ancient Strigos Empire. For some reason, and this is because of an old map. I don't know why the old map did it, but there's an old map that has it here, which doesn't make any fucking sense. Because if you know the story, it's that Alcatazar, when he dies, he falls into what essentially is the Blind River, and it carries him all the way down into the Marshes of Madness, and that's where Caden finds him on the shores of the Blind River. And that's where he establishes the city of Morkheim. It's supposed to be here somewhere in the Marshes of Madness, not way the fuck up here in the Backlands.
It's one of those ones that I get very frustrated by because the stories and the lore say one thing and then mismatched maps say others. But I'm okay with Morkheim being in different places. But I just want it to make sense. And if they're putting Morkheim there has to be a reason. For example, the Blind River has moved. That's fine. Because it's thousands of years old. The story is ancient. We could easily have had the Blind River go past that area in the past. Which means that you should instead have old forms of lakes that used to be up there, that used to be connected. You could make it work. But they kind of haven't.
Andy, you fell for my trap card.
Which is?
You said you're okay with moving rivers, right?
Yeah.
Check out where the River Ruin is now.
Oh, yeah. Okay, I'm not that okay with.
It's so far east.
Yeah, it really is.
And look, the Black Fortress is on the wrong side.
Yeah,
it's. And so the Black Fortress is supposed to be on the west side of the river because Tarmakon crosses the River Ruin to attack it.
Yeah, it's interesting. Now, again, I don't have an enormous amount of issue with moving rivers, moving those sorts of locations. Some locations you can't move. Some you can just claim if they've got it wrong in other maps. Rivers are one of those things that do move, and sometimes quite a lot during the course of their life. Take a look at any ancient maps, and sometimes you're like, oh, wait a minute, that river's not in the place that it used to be. I'm cool with that. But some of these movements are pretty big.
Yeah, let's see. Let's Lord Chris. Hold on. I think we missed his thing. I'm gonna grab it real fast. Yeah, but granted, the River Ruin moving is like slightly annoying, but it's not a huge deal.
Yeah, it bugs me.
It's one of those weird, like, all right, this feels like unnecessary. But there are a couple of other actually very funny things going on. There you are. So they did actually add to the Darklands. This is all brand new. Mm-hmm. So they added the Chaos Dwarfs. They're back. The Tower of Gorgoth is on the map. So is the Dark Fortress.
See that. Like that.
We got a Dire Town next to good old Pig Barter.
Can you move up to see if they've connected it through yet? Have they put the roads in between Zarnagarund and... no, they haven't yet. Okay, no, that's interesting. So none of the roads are in yet, because it's a proper empire up there.
Yeah, you can't interact with any of it yet.
Okay, interesting.
You got the Dark Citadel.
Yep.
Uzkalani, which is Uzkalak is way further north than it used to be.
Yeah, that's moved.
Which is interesting because that means the Kislev Empire.
Karat Vlag's in a completely different place too.
Yeah, the Kislev Empire now intersects the Chaos Dwarf Empire.
Yeah.
Which is that's not necessarily like a big deal. The Chaos Dwarf Empire has always been very much about like very small circles of influence covering a large space. But this one also makes me really laugh. The northern or the northern road through the
Drakenmoor's got an E on the end now. Didn't used to have that.
Yeah, so it's
Drakenmoor is now Murray.
Yeah.
Murray.
Yeah. Funny enough, we also have the gates of the gates of Zur. Someone misspelled Czar, so that's a spelling mistake, but funny. This one, of course, goes up past the Vale of Woe up into the Plain of Woes, which takes us up to the edge of the Kislevite Empire.
The urge to just go, whoa!
Yeah,
I won't.
We got the Demon Stump here, the Sentinels, which
yeah.
are classic. Flare Rock, very big classic.
The Haunted Forest has lost some of its text underneath the copy paste.
Yes, it has.
Someone's just taken the textures for the trees and accidentally put it over the text.
Yeah, interestingly, if you compare this to the last version of this map before this map got updated, the Haunted Forest is actually much bigger now. The version of this before had it ending much closer to the coastline. It's like properly large now.
I would just like to say that I hate this entire area. Purely because almost every time I've played Total War Warhammer, it's been taken over by Nurgle to such an extreme that I can barely ever get into it. So I just broadly despise this entire part of the world, just so you all know.
Dire Bogs, very cool. The Scolded Sloth.
Sloth, love it.
Yeah, that's nice. I do like that. Fortress of Vorag, still representing the way we all love it. Of course, we got Straits of the Gash and stuff. They've added. We got Nagashazar's got its own unique little icon.
It's a slightly different place, but
it should be. It's supposed to be more up here-ish.
Yeah, it's moved around, but Nagashazar often does.
Fire Mountain, all good. But we got the Ash Mountains, Blasted Ways, Darklands. You got Mount Grimfang, Crookback Mountain, which is of course important for Skaven.
Yep.
I don't think anything else here is. Zorn is cool.
Yeah, it's a broadly wide.
They did name the lakes here around the Dark Citadel, which is cool.
Which is nice.
So we got the Ozargrani and the Ozaryatruk.
Yeah, I'm particularly pleased to see the expansion of Kislev. I've been asked about this one quite a bit because I obviously wrote a good chunk of material for the previous version of Kislev.
Like the fact that the Ungol's are written as having influence all the way out here.
That is actually crazy and also goes against the existing version of the lore that we had before. But I love it because it really does show how far Kislev will have fallen when we reach the modern times where it's a far, far smaller area. Now, it wouldn't surprise me if by the end times they just change everything and make Kislev huge and say it was always all the way across the mountains. Yeah! Rather than taking the cool story that they're telling here, which is Kislev is on one side of the mountains and the other, and then come the Great War against Chaos, they're going to lose all of this territory, and I think that's brilliant. More power to that as a story.
Well, I hope they do that. Like the fact that they got like the named mountain range here, the
that's good. And this is all new as well. This isn't names that were existing beforehand.
Great Rasputia, a big old fortress, way the fuck out here, south of the Challenge Stone.
It's super, super deep.
And their northernmost place of Tamuk, which is the Kislev's northernmost city. It's not even like it's like, oh, it's an outpost. It's a fucking city on a lake.
Yeah. I mean, this is a massive change to the background for Kislev. And I do mean massive. Beforehand, Kislev was all of it, pretty much all of it, sitting over on one side of the mountains. There had been lots of, in Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay First Edition, examples of expansions over the mountains onto the other side in their Great Wheatlands area that they were attempting to fashion there over on the other side of the World's Edge Mountains, but it had largely failed. This would be in the area that's now Zorn's Uzkel, which there it is, it's right in the map right now. And the Wheatlands area over on that side was where now there's giant rivers and stuff, and I kind of love that. But That changes, but interestingly, they have taken the Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 1 version of the map of Kislev rather than the far later maps that came from Warhammer Fantasy Battles 6th edition or Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 2nd edition. They have completely rewritten the mapping area of Kislev, but only half of it. In that they basically took half of the map, the bottom half, and said, this is basically our version of Kislev, but we are also going to incorporate a ton of stuff from the later version of Kislev over in the top. And I kind of like their attempt to do the whole thing. There's only one thing I'm not a huge fan of, and that's the massive expansion of the forest across all of Kislev, because Kislev by the mid-2000s had been written as open oblasts of snow that was constantly underneath the let's say influence of the Ancient Widow or the Mother Kislev or whatever you wanted to call her. And that got turned into gigantic forests, much like it was in the first edition of the Kislev area. And the Kislev area in that one was far more like old Russia mixed with various Eastern factions. And they've gone through a mixture of both, using both some names from the old stuff and other names from the new stuff. And it's a weird amalgam. There's a bunch of locations here that, for example, I named in a previous edition when I was writing about Kislev. I mentioned Shamon Darek right at the very beginning. That's over to the far left at the moment.
Yep.
That originally came from Riders of the Dead, for example, by Dan Abnett. If we take Fort Stragov or Fort Kaminsky, Fort Ostros, pardon me, they are in place there because of Gotrek and Felix, and the various names that had been dropped there and the implications that they would have as they moved up through Blackbud Pass up to the north. There's a bunch of here bits are also entirely new. I kind of love what they've done with Kislev. It's a mixture of all the versions that Warhammer has offered, while simultaneously sort of contradicting some.
I will say that I will be happy with the forest if Games Workshop continues to expand on what they've done in Total War and is really diving into like the hags, and that element of Kislev is very much in control of the dark depths of the forest. And cool. Allows that to be a very spiritual realm where like the Gospodars just don't have influence. Yeah. I think it'd be pretty fun.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's loads of really cool stories that can be told with the new version. Really, really happy to see the Crags of Shargan. If you drop into that one, that's just sitting just on to the north.
We talked about that during the Dragon Ogre stream.
Yeah, I'm super happy to see those because they're from all the way back in Warhammer, almost first edition, second edition. Okay, that's a proper ancient reference. I added it to the Kislev map that I did for Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 2nd edition, as I was basically looking for every source that had ever mentioned Kislev. And the Crags of Shargan are proper old Warhammer lore. Some of the oldest Warhammer locations that you can get. Far older than, for example, Bolgasgrad. Bolgasgrad's a funny one because when we were doing the Kislev book, there was an argument to remove it entirely. Because at that time, the studio didn't want Bolgasgrad. It just wanted Prague, Kislev City, and Erengrad, and nothing else. And we had a discussion about it as to what to do with it. Bolgasgrad was eventually decided to be kept after another discussion with Games Workshop. But it got removed entirely in one edition of what we were writing.
It's so funny considering how many like major cities there are now with like
it's really interesting to see the comparison between one version and the other. It's always good to see Lebia still there.
Let's get caught up here with super chat stuff real fast. Recast cultural, it happens even on the tabletop. Gark Ironskin running a demon powered mechanical beast. Halflings taking out the Empire tools. The soup tank. The soup tank. Yeah, the soup tank's a classic.
Halflings taking on Empire tools is not exactly cross culture because Halflings are Empire as far as most versions of their presentations are. So it's for all that we can say, they've taken those on. The reality is kind of just the Halflings are the Empire. But yes, the point you make is nevertheless 100% accurate.
Diamond, the feedback in the feedback loop of certain types of people attracting certain winds, which then influence people, which has the biggest influence overall. I have a feeling it's a bit of a chicken and the egg situation. Did the Wind of Death come here because humans built a graveyard? Did the humans decide to build a graveyard because of the hint of the Wind of Death?
Garden of Moor, just because, graveyard.
Garden of Moor, yeah.
But yes, chicken egg. They are attracted to certain areas, but equally certain areas attract. And there is a lot of to and fro between them. I wouldn't like to say one is stronger than the other.
Before I forget, where's my Dork's Rock?
Dork.
Well, you got Iron Rock, good old Dork. I forget where exactly Dork's Rock is supposed to actually be itself. I think it's supposed to be a little further closer to Black Crag, if memory serves. But actually, I think it's supposed to be in Black Crag because Black Crag was taken by Dork. So I think it's inside Black Crag, if memory serves. We have the blog person. You mentioned King Lewin's death begins the false Grail affair, but it's Jules the Just death that starts that. Oh, yeah, I have a very strong suspicion Jules the Just is going to get thrown in the garbage can.
Yeah, as is often the case.
Yeah, the Bretonnian kings are a really, really messy group. I mean, sort of like the emperors and stuff. Pretty much anyone that's not the High Elves has a very messy, ill-defined like list of who gets to do what. Jules the Just, if memory serves, he does a whopping 2 things, which is I think that he is credited in a side publication as being the king that like established the laws of dueling for jousting, where you're not supposed to kill your opponent, you're just supposed to like defeat them but not kill them, and then he dies to set off the false square fail, and that's like it. That's all he does. So I don't think GW is intending on keeping him because there's not enough time to kill the current king, bring in Jules the Just,
and then do another. Yeah.
And then kill him so that the already established special character who now has his own mini, Gaston, can come and become
do
king.
His thing. Yeah, sadly, I think that's probably the case. You tend to find that this is definitely the case with emperors, and they just get rewritten according to each game. And it's something that, as someone who tries to record these and make sense of them, is exceedingly frustrating. It's very common in the roleplay game, for example, whenever someone creates a new book to just go, oh, I'll create Emperor such and such or Supreme Patriarch such and such, who was alive at a particular point. Because they just haven't done the research and realized there's other ones who were also alive at exactly the same point. And it's more common for that to happen in the battle game, where they just ignore what came beforehand and make something new. For example, the Emperor over in the Reichland portion at this point, so that's the electoral emperors as it's called in various older books, should be a Halskrug, should be from House Halskrug. That's definitely not going to be the case in the old world version, because they will go with their own new created families and factions. So this change doesn't surprise me in the slightest.
Yeah, and Gaston, the change of the spelling, I think it's still the same Gaston. Because Gaston de Guest doesn't become known as Gaston de Guest until after he does some things. He's just Gaston for a bit. But because I think if you translate it, Guest is like, it means something kind of weird. That whole story is going to change rather significantly, but we'll see what happens. Because it's an old story, to be fair. The Affair of the False Grail narrative has not changed in a really long time. Necromancer Cobalt, since we got a Rome-esque faction being expanded now, we could get some fun legendary characters. How would you Warhammer?
Oh, do you mean Curious Geezer?
Yeah, we already have Curious Geezer. What are you talking about?
Geezer, holy crap! Yeah, we've got Curious Geezer. He's already there in Warhammer 5th edition. I think Dogs of War gives you good old Curious Geezer all over the place. Nigel Stillman's marvelously named character. They have renamed and reused a whole host of classical style characters for their versions of Tilia in the past. Particularly if you take a look at, say, Remus, which I'm not entirely sure is marked there. Is Remus there?
Yes, it is. Remus is a whole kingdom too.
Excellent, good. As it should be. So it's one of the
I would
Princeton.
not be shocked if they decide to either have because there's a very high chance from what I'm hearing that we might see playable Southern Realms, especially because they're actually bothering to explore them a bit with like actual factions and new cities and stuff. I would not be surprised if we eventually get a book for Southern Realms, and if we do, I suspect one of the things they'll do with Remus is be like either there was in ancient times a Caesar-like character, or they'll make actual serious characters for Talea.
Yeah, I think it's quite likely, particularly because if they sit down and think about it, there is a host of titles across the old world that draw upon real-world Roman backgrounds. For example, the Tsar and the Tsarina, which is just basically Caesar. and are a different form. So we've got linguistic roots already. The Remus influence is there for a Reman Empire. We also have stories that are in several books about Myrmidia. Myrmidia, who rises approximately 300 to 500, depending on which book you go with. IC, so about 2,000 years ago, approximately, rises up and binds both Tilia and Astalia underneath one rule for a very, very short, period of time. So we've got all manner of different stories that we can pull together, and Myrmidia in particular was supposedly after the height of Tilian civilization, the fracturing of it. So this is sort of after the Romans, then they all get bound together. We've got lots of stories we could draw upon if we wish to do so. Will they? We will see. I think it's quite likely they'll just make their own version up.
Yeah, cross your fingers though.
Cross fingers to do a bit more reading.
Chris, Wednesday idea: build a border princedom, then do a what if at a later date with that princedom. That could be fun. Yeah, that could be a fun one. Oh, that to the list. Skylar Martin realized I got Warhammer autism, not high paid job / genius autism. No,
hey, Skylar,
yeah.
I know you well. Yeah, I resemble that remark.
What do you mean my autistic focus isn't profitable? Yeah.
Damn it.
Super Orlok, where would you guys suggest an ancient Greece-inspired human civilization? I used to massage mine into Kypris, but I feel like moving it.
You tend to find classical is often defined as a mixture of Latin and Greek in terms of how it presents itself. So one of the languages that is the precursor to many of the languages in the old world is classical, and it's a mixture. Meaning that we have lots of space for potential ancient Greece-like civilizations. Like you, Super Orlok, I have, pardon me as I bash my mic there. I have used Kypris and similar old, now lost civilizations throughout the Border Princes for this. And I have tried to use the Black Peninsula in some ways. Myrmidons is down there as well over on the Tilian side. I presume Myrmidons is still there somewhere.
Yeah,
I'm busy looking at the map. I'm not zooming in there properly. There it is, Myrmidons. And I've used that entire area in a variety of different ways in different games. But when it comes to official Games Workshop stuff, I have avoided it like the plague, largely because Games Workshop themselves kind of have. So it's up to you entirely as to how to do this. I hope that the old world will add some extra detail here and add something a bit bigger to the classical era of this particular area, because it's definitely been there since ages past. Since the Tylos Empire ages ago, that eventually becomes whatever they decide is inside Tilia. So we definitely have the Roman side sort of covered, even though they don't do much detail. But the other side, I think, really could do with a lot more work.
Yeah, and one thing I'll include is that, so a thing I can tell you about the old world that's interesting is that when Games Workshop first released this map, so the very, very, very first edition of the old world map, which was like forever ago now, the very first thing they revealed was the Border Princes. And they quite literally just vomited random factions onto the map, where if you look at it, you actually go and read them all, they basically went and said, okay, we want a representative from every vaguely playable faction. So here's a Kislevite one, here's an Astalian one, here's a Talayan one, here's a Bretonnian one, here's an Empire one, here's a Vampire one, and then we'll kind of fill up the rest of them with like a mixture of Bretonnian and Empire. And after they did that, so they kind of just threw random shit at the wall, random bullshit go. And there was a number of interesting discussion that Games Workshop internally was genuinely very surprised at the extreme reaction to the Border Princes, and that people were excited. People wanted to know about the Border Princes. They wanted to know who these factions were. They wanted like these factions to have playable stuff. And it kind of caught GW by surprise. Just like how the frankly initial sales of the old world caught GW very much by surprise. The game has proven a lot more popular than they initially anticipated. So I wouldn't be surprised to see the Border Princes maybe get changed very dramatically as we go through the old world, because one of the things I'm really hoping they do with this map, I don't know if they're going to, but I hope they do, is that once they're finished with the initial updates, adding like a year slider. So like the starting year is 2276. And then as they release more books and campaigns and updates, the years progress and the map changes.
And it'll change significantly too.
Yeah, which would be super awesome and would be one of the
to see Chaos wipe out the North.
Yeah, that would be one of the coolest fucking things they could possibly do. Because I mean, the first edition, if you go read the first edition books, there are subtle updates. Like there's now a Chaos faction living in the Wasteland because they took over. I can't remember they invaded the Wasteland. They took over some city over here. I can't remember if it was. I don't think it's Hargendorf. I think it was something further over here. But they haven't added it to this map yet, which is where
no, it wasn't called Hargendorf before. It's called Hargenfels.
Oh well, it's Hargendorf now.
It's gone through different names. Hargendorf. Originally Hargenfels and the Barney of Hargenfels, and Hargendorf was sort of mentioned here and there. But it's interesting to see it's now Hargendorf again.
Indeed.
And Emskrank is always funny because it's actually new Emskrank.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
but
I know
Emskrank doesn't exist at that point. It's a funny one too. Interesting they use Emskrank at all. By its original discussions, it wouldn't exist there in the slightest. And Beakerhaven is in completely wrong place. That just makes me laugh. How far away it is. Delberts.
Hi, look, it's Delberts.
Delberts is hilarious. Delberts was originally, if you go where the River Delb text is, it was originally almost down at the bottom where the River Delb text is in first edition. Then in Warhammer 6th, they moved it to the middle in the Storm of Chaos campaign. And they just went, hey, it's in the middle of Midland now. And everyone went, what?
So
okay.
Did they put Delbren where Delberts
I
used to
put
be
Delbren down there.
Oh,
so that was me. So that there was another town.
The Lawhammer cast always gets so confused about whether they're talking about Delbren or Delberts.
Exactly, and that's how it should be. So I added Delbren to the setting so that there was at least an understandable mistake for why the cartographers marked them in the wrong places, because that's always cool and fun. So that was marked on a bunch of the Warhammer maps. So also, super fun to see that there.
Gnomes.
Mirror Moors, they've been moved. We've got the Mirror Moors and we've got the Midden Moors, which is kind of hilarious because I separated them in more than one map. But they've actually put a whole bunch of extra water bits just above Karaberg, where I did in one map and I moved it in another one. It's really funny to see how they've merged the two different versions of the maps together. The Midden Moors are wider, which I really, really like. And for me, this is great, although the tree line perhaps goes a little bit too much over the Mirror Moors. For me, that should be moors. No trees there. It's fascinating to see where that one goes. And that's obviously fun for me because that's where the gnomes are.
Yeah, and that's just a flat-out gnome symbol. It's the only one of its kind on the entire map. I have checked.
And that's super cool.
Fucking Warhammer gnomes.
That's beyond cool. I mean, if you were doing it correctly, Glimdwaro would be just about where the first O of mirror is. That's where Glimdwaro would be, approximately. I'm actually looking over at my master map at the moment to compare it. Yep, that's about right.
Emma Hawkins asked, so Dragonmoor, who named it? How terrible was that Dragon to name it that? Probably no answer, but it's a fun world-building question.
Yeah, the Desolation of Dragonmoor has been kicking around there since the map that was released at, Warhammer, was it White Dwarf 200? I think that's when it was.
Probably, yeah.
I think it was that one. And it's been popping on in maps ever since pretty much the 4th edition of Warhammer. And very rarely has anything discussed on it at all.
Other than the very obvious, Desolation of Smile
this
reference.
Place was absolutely wiped out. Yeah.
Yeah. Funny is that there's actually a storyline in the Monstrous Arcanum for the Chaos Dwarf section about how the Desolation of Dragonmoor got particularly extra fucked up because the Clan Scryer and the Chaos Dwarfs had a big fight there.
Yeah.
They messed it up. It's a horrible place these days because they unleash so much like Warpstone and Chaos Dwarf demon weaponry, and the spells they unleashed were so bad that they spawned a Storm of Magic, which, if you know how terrifying Storms of Magic are, you should know how stupid of an accomplishment that is, and it's very funny. And both sides got completely wiped out. Links, are there plans to talk about the Cathay ship? I'd love to hear your speculations if you're ready to move on to it. We can take a look at it real quick. So yes, of course.
Take 2 seconds.
There is a Cathayan ship just north of Marienburg.
Marienburg has long had Cathayan quarters, so as to exactly when that comes in, you get different versions of that story. But yeah, that to me 100% makes sense.
Yeah, I don't think it's like anything super crazy, uber significant. Games Workshop has already showed us that this map that we're looking at right now goes all the way into Cathay and covers all of Cathay. They're not letting us look at it yet, but if you go Google literally like Warhammer, if you go Google Warhammer Community Cathay articles, one of the articles has like the full fucking Cathay map, and it's huge and surprisingly well detailed already. But the only factions they show off on it yet are Miao Ying and Zhao Ming. But we'll have to see. Dino Man, I hope if we get to lay in the future, we get Pavis crossbowmen as a core unit, along with guys with long shields and hammers, similar to Venetian heavy cavalry.
I would really like to see something far more Italian history than what we've had before. Beyond just, it will make some sort of pastiche of the Romans. I agree, it would be super cool to get some nice, unique units from that area.
Yeah,
I'm not sure what will happen though, because that's expensive in terms of modeling, in terms of army creation. So it's much easier doing what they're currently doing, which is basically repurposing old builds. They're taking old armies, repurposing them, giving them new stats, adding perhaps a bunch of new stuff that's been created for one reason or another from Forge World, add a couple of character models on top. Job's a good one, and a really good one at that, because they've built a lot of fun and interesting factions. To do this, you'd be diving into the Dogs of War old metal miniatures, plus little elves on top of that. The toughie.
Yeah, I definitely think you'll see the return of the old minis, kind of like Andy says, like the pike and shot, the galloper gun, a lot of those other little things. But we'll have to see. David Whitfield, is the old world still set in the pseudo 14th Bretonia late 100 Years War? Okay, so I'm gonna give you a really honest, blunt answer. All right, I need you to sit down for this. Sit down very carefully, and I'm gonna reveal a terrible, dark truth to you, which is that the Warhammer world does not have a reliable form of technology that you could point to for any of its factions. It is going to run up and slap you in the face every single time you try to do this. I don't recommend doing this.
I kind of agree. And David, as much as it's very easy for us to say, oh, that bit's kind of similar to this, and oh, that bit's kind of similar to that, it's not the real world. And they will constantly undermine what you would expect for a real world equivalent at whichever century you pick. You go, oh, the Empire, that's sort of Renaissance-y, maybe around about 50... Wait a minute, they've got a mechanical horse. Not only that, there's various steam contraptions that look like they've escaped from the... Let's be honest, the 18th century, significantly later than you would expect. They've got factories and mills doing a host of things that look far more Victorian, if you're looking at it from the British perspective, than they would almost anything else. And that is combined with some sensibilities that look like they might have escaped from, I don't know, Henry VIII's time, or later, deep into the Renaissance, if you look at some of the... upheavals that have happened down the Seine Nuln over into, of all places, Averheim. So there's a massive mixture. If you go up north into Middenland, a lot of that feels almost 12th, 13th century, at least in terms of some of its styling. So there's a real mixture, and trying to pin it down on one is often just going to cause you more of a headache than just accepting the weird world that is Warhammer.
Now, I will say, as far as like the tabletop battle game is concerned, yeah, those are probably some vague broad strokes you could follow. But if you zoom in any closer, all of that stuff is going to fall apart almost immediately.
It sadly does. This is actually, I think, a point that's worth calling out, particularly for people who plan at any points to write for the game. Because a lot of people get fixated on trying to make something an analog of something in the real world. And they forget that this is the Warhammer world, and it's cool of awesome. And yes, it may draw inspiration from the real world, but the awesome that it manifests is often drawing from multiple sources and building something cool on top of that. And because they get so fixated on trying to, for example, make the Empire, say, a 15th to 16th century plate and gunpowder world, they get lost in just creating that, and then they forget to do things like, holy shit, this is a world where the demogryphs are real, and demogryphs are doing their thing. That's not going to fit quite into that example. Or where we've got gold wizards who can do all manner of crazy stuff. So yeah, I think you'll find that Total War and its version of the Empire is actually truer to where Games Workshop has taken it than some examples that you'll find in the roleplay game where they just get lost in often a Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 1 version of what the world should be, forgetting that there's crazy shit like, using magic to empower all of your shots.
I was going to say,
so it does sort of crazy stuff like Elspeth and Draken.
Yeah, imagine like leaving magic out of the equation. You go, okay, no wizards. But like the people, a classic example I like to give is you're putting the guy, you'll have someone walk up and be, hey, what kind of guns do the Empire use? Like, what's the gun technology for handgunners in the Empire? Someone will say, oh, well, it's a very simple, the Empire's only capable of a very simple basic, like, flintlock mechanism. And then I go, okay, what about the engineer who's not using any magic whatsoever to make a fully autonomous clockwork steed? What kind of guns is he making? Because he's making guns. And his guns are going to be absolute bullshit compared to a simple handgun. But, those exist in the same universe. So, yeah.
I'm going to answer his next point straight away. What I meant, says David, was the models, are they just going to repeat the old Warhammer Fantasy Battle models? Or are we going to get wholly new models, Empire with male cavalry and no gunpowder? Nope, they're just repeating them. There has been no advancement at all. In fact, not only are they repeating them, they're taking models that they said in the later End Times era were new to that era, porting them back 250 years and saying, hey, we've got them here too. So, broadly speaking, you're absolutely spot on. They are just copy-pasting from the later Warhammer 8th edition, say, in fact, everything from Warhammer 3rd up to Warhammer 8. If they've got a model, they're happy to copy-paste it into the old world. And that means that we're going to have a lot of lore problems, because say something like some of the Empire artillery pieces, you would never find them in the old world if you go with the origins of those artillery pieces, but they'll just post them over because they've got the model and they're also super cool. Who doesn't want to have a giant Hellblaster volley gun? So broadly speaking, yeah, apologies for not quite getting what you meant there, but absolutely they are just copy pasting over.
Yeah, second that. The GW is hilariously fucking up the era of Karl Franz timeline. In that if everything they're making canon, the era of Karl Franz is going to be significantly more advanced than it was in the original version.
This isn't the first time they've done it, though. Take for example the Lustria book when it came out. The Lustria book for Fantasy Battle War, 7th, whatever one it was.
Yeah,
so that was set all the way back in 1492, and we got cannons, we got guns, and we're popping around with what is almost certainly technology that would have been expanded upon over that time. But no, it is not. We have 1,000 years of technological stagnation. So this isn't the first time that they've gone, hey, the Warhammer world's just weird technologically.
Andy Law, what is the best way to get Dark Deeds in Australia?
Hey, so Dr. Awesome, that's a good question. I actually asked this very recently to Modifius. That's who's doing the publishing for Dark Deeds, which of course I will bring out because I've got to do at least once per stream. Buy Dark Deeds! The answer is, unless you've got a local friendly game shop that is happy to import it in on your behalf, you're pretty much going to have to either pick it up from Modifius directly from their US store, or pick it up directly from their UK store. So you're either shipping it from UK or shipping it from the US, both of which can be almost prohibitively expensive. So I'm sorry to say, unless you've got a local shop who's willing to just do a nice big order directly from Modifius and get it shipped over, it's going to be pretty expensive. We've got quite a few folks who've already bought it, and thanks very much for you lovely people over there who have done. We've got the same over in New Zealand as an issue, but there isn't a local hub that you can order from if you happen to be Antipodean. So I'm sorry to say, you just ship it from Modifius and grin and bear it.
Man, I have a theory regarding tech advancement in Warhammer. It just works on civilization logic. Bretonnia further behind on their tech tree because they didn't invest enough producing science. Well, if you go watch our Lady of the Lake stream, we actually talk a lot about why Bretonian science may not have advanced. So feel free to go check that out.
Yeah, Bretonians make sense. I also have a theory, but my theory is actually based on something completely different that involves Lizardmen. But that's a theory that's 100% my game alone.
Getting back to map stuff and some of the stuff that's new to this particular iteration of the map, Althal Lorne is looking quite nice.
Yep,
pretty lovely. It's nice and big, which is great. I do like that we've got Mondidier Pass, which connects to Winterteeth Pass, interestingly, going into it. Winterteeth Path is going
Winterteeth Pass goes to the wrong place.
Yeah, why is it going the wrong direction? Winterteeth
Pass goes up into the south of
way.
what they've marked as Sudanland. So this is a completely different place that they've put the Winterteeth Pass. This is an actual move on the map. Previously, Winterteeth Path moved up into the south of the Empire, and the River of Echoes, which goes underneath the vaults, connects through to the south of the Empire, up about where Kruger 333 is currently marked. So the River of Echoes is a very famous place. There was an entire book that was forced around it, centered around it.
Yeah, that's also
Dark Shadow.
Tamarkan's invasion route is...
Yeah, totally. His invasion route is ruined by this. So Tamarkan is messed up by this map. But the River of Echoes is an underground river that you can trade along. So there's ships moving along this long river that connects Tilia through to the Empire. Super fascinating place. But that has been sort of messed up with this map.
Now it looks like it goes into Ethel Loren after it's stopping off at Kazakh Gintaz.
Yeah, it's a proper mess in that corner. If I go look at, I'm gonna just
look at so there's just a line between the Black Mountains and the Vol. Small hold of Kazakh Gintaz stands sentinel upon the shores of the River Echoes and the junction between Mondidier Pass and Wintersteep Pass.
Yeah, that's all sorts of wrong in comparison to the previous maps. But, you know, it's fun enough, I suppose.
Interesting.
It's a very different version for how those particular places match together. And Tamarkan's passes just doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah. Moving on to some things that I actually find quite interesting about the new map. Is that Norska is so much bigger than it used to be, in that it not only do the Norscan tribes control the peninsula, the Norscan peninsula, they also control the southern chaos, the southern part of the northern chaos waste, which I find very, very interesting.
I don't just find it interesting. I love it. I just love it. It's just a bigger, wider, better area. And we're getting some deeper potential lore for how this all works together. Just basically love it.
Yeah, I love how much more interesting and busy the chaos wastes are. Like, the chaos waste actually feels like a place where people live instead of just being like a mysterious mess place. So like we see here at the Snagervold, that we have the ominous fortune of the Snager tribe, bloodthirsty deities of a bestial demonic patron. I like that they don't say, oh, it's just corn. No, it's this other weird, horrible demon thing, a minor power. Great, awesome. One of the few permanent dwellings found in the chaos waste, which is within the blood marshes, which talks about all sorts of horrible, bloody nonsense. But one of the things that I like that the Snager also apparently have two Snagervolds. I don't know if that's a mistake or if they just have two locations and they just named them the same thing.
I'm calling it a mistake.
Because the Snager tribe maybe isn't that maybe they're not that inventive with their naming.
Yeah, I think it's quite likely, given that we've had changes in Nestalia. We've had changes in this map multiple times, and we also have quite clearly some copying errors down in the forest down in the south. That mistakes are on this map, and it's better that we just get the iterative process of it going on. But here, quite clearly, we've got two locations with the same label, and I reckon that's probably a mistake.
So this is one of the ones I really like, the Godhar tribes, which is a new Norscan tribe. Inhabiting the land south of the Plain of Illusions, the hardy warriors of the Godhar tribes frequently journey across the frozen sea to raid their fellow Norskins and the northern reaches of Kislev. Great.
Love
Excellent. Updates to the Cold Mires, which of course where the Toad Dragons come from. The Cold Mires is in a very different location from where it used to be.
It just completely shifted. It used to be all the way up there.
The Cold Mire used to be like way over here. So that's in a very different location.
Yeah,
but
it feels
also
like somebody that heard a name, didn't know where it was, so went, I'm just going to pop it on the map then.
Yeah, we have the Shard Woods, which of course talks about the forest full of shards of shattered bone, which is cool, fun, awesome. We've got, but like, look at all these cool settlements. These Norscan settlements where we've got Thrakhorn. Thrakhorn is a permanent fortress of the largest of the Kvelig tribes, a deepwater harbor from which countless wolf ships have sailed to raid pillars. Okay, so these guys are not Norscan; they're the Kveligs.
Yeah, Kveligs.
But you got Black Rock here, which is a big old monolith. The Kvelig tribe, which is a big old tribe that likes butchering beasts for. Okay, so they like to trade with a bunch of people. Folly of Malefics, which I believe is different location than it used to be. I think it used to be further east. But maybe not. It's hard for me to remember off the top of my head. Let's see. You got here's another Norscan one. So we got Veslikist guarding the waters of Kraken Bay. Veslikist is a large and well fortified Norscan stronghold in the southern shores of the Chaos Waste. Yeah. So I am really digging how much bigger and more important the Norskins are. And the fact this goes such a good job of showing how the identity of what is a Norscan is a very like southern interpretation of a northern tribe.
Yeah.
Instead of like how they would actually think of themselves. Because by a southern definition, these wouldn't be Norskins because they don't live in Norska, but the Norskins don't care about that shit. The people that live here identify with the people that live here. You got the Palace of Princes, which talks about. I do like that they're keeping the animal totemic view of the dark gods. Devotees of the serpent flock to this warrior lodge throughout the year, so followers of Slanesh. We've got Fortress of the Damned. See, there's a pretty interesting. Oh, this one's really fun because it implies something kind of interesting. So it says, surrounded on all sides by perilous slopes, Chaos Champions have vied for control of the Fortress of the Damned across the centuries.
Basically, King of the Hill.
Yeah, daily, the fortress's attackers endeavor to lure its inhabitants out to meet them in open battle, hoping to finally break the eternal siege. That implies whoever's been holding up in there has never been brought out. Like, it's not like, oh, the Chaos Champions are rotating. They're attacking something that lives in there, and they haven't been able to lure it out. Which is really cool. I like shit like that, because you're like, oh, that's weird. What the hell's going on in there? Some other interesting... So, see, we've got more settlements. Whether for a lot of beastmen. A whole lot of beastmen tribes.
Yeah, which is always good.
Yep. You got the Aggles, Plain of Ash.
How about Norska itself? Does it have? Can we see the south of Norska? Just haven't seen there's any.
So we've got Vertica, Earthsland, Aardvark, Tutorai, the Monolith of Jet, which we can click on. So this goes to Borkill, Bloody-Handed, that's a classic. Thrasil, Bragnir, the Hall of Snager, which is another Snager, so they're in 3 locations apparently.
Yeah.
Ulrikstad, not Ulrikstad, but Ulrikstad.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Bjornlings, here we go. Ishvard, nestled in deep fjord, Ishvard is sheltered from the frequent storms that ravage the coast of Norska. Its protection makes Ishvard a vital trading port for merchants from both Norska and the Old World, who are protected throughout their stay by the hospitality of the ruling chief.
I really enjoy that they've taken the broader view of Norska, and they haven't just said these are Chaos Tribesmen, which was the case through some of the editions of Warhammer, and was constantly attacked and broken up by some articles in White Dwarf, by role-playing game editions. I mean, depending upon where you went, you got different versions of what the Norse might be like. But the general perspective of the army list was Norse equals chaos. So I'm really liking that that's not the case here. We could have ourselves an entire Norscan army full of effectively Warhammer Vikings that are not chaos leaning at all. And for me, that's to the advantage of the game because that's freaking awesome.
Yeah, I honestly feel like the Warriors of Chaos Arcane Journal was almost testing this out a little bit, where like one of the armies of infamy is a pure Norscan army. It's the Wolves of the Sea or the Sea Wolves, one of those. But it's Norskins. We have the Fortress of Vikjordsburg. Probably butchered that. But yeah, as far as the fact that like old worlders could journey here and they're protected, I dig that. I like that a lot.
Me too. It's nice. It's a broadening of the background in a way that really pleases me. I'm also really happy to see where they've put Albion. Now, obviously, Albion's not detailed here.
Yeah, it's
okay, but Albion is placed in its much more modern location. For those of you who are map aficionados, if we go all the way back to the original Old World map, Albion's placed above and to the left of Norska. So way up north. Good. If we look here, the south of Norska would be the south of Albion, pardon me, would be further north than the south of Norska, and they've put it back in. They put it into the far more modern location, which I
have a appropriate location.
Yeah. I had actual arguments with some people regarding this because they wanted it to go back up north. And I was like, no, it's not up there anymore. They moved it ages ago. But it's worth noting, though, that there are a lot of Warhammer fans who don't like Albion that far south. They don't like where it currently sits. They think it's been moved. And there's a reason for that. It has. It has literally been moved. There's a relatively famous map that came from White Dwarf. I think it's White Dwarf 200. I keep on thinking it's White Dwarf 200. But if you go look at the one that comes from White Dwarf 200, it's the first big map that they did of the entirety of the Warhammer world as it was at that time. It's just the old world. And that map has Albion really far north, like really far north. And it wasn't until much later editions that it came down. So yeah, if you are an Albion aficionado, be aware it has moved big time, significantly shifted by hundreds of miles. Which, you know, makes sense for a place wrapped up in shrouded mists.
Oh, yeah. Mount Head Spire, very cool thing about Norskins just getting like tradable resources. Despite the regular volcanic activity that afflicts Mount Hellspire, Norskin tries to frequent the area to collect valuable obsidian. and other resources found from the rich volcanic earth.
Yeah, obsidian.
We got our Greyling tribe, believing themselves to be the strongest and mightiest of the Norskin tribes. The Greylings are resistant to the chieftains of the other tribes who would unite the scattered peoples or seek dominion over lands owned by the Greyling warlords. I also like the amount of strife they're introducing to Norska in the early old world, because they leave the little bread trails that somebody's trying to unite them, but various groups of them are resisting against it, which is fun.
Yeah, I'm really hoping that they do what we were suggesting earlier. Well, what you were suggesting earlier, pardon me, where we have chaos swoop down for the Great War. And I would love to see loads of these places at war with themselves. As Norskins from the north hit the Norskins in the south, almost all of them are going to lose as they sweep their way through Norska and head into Kislev in the north. And I think that will make for some super cool battles. But we also have Norse coming across the ocean, meeting up with the elves, then crashing into Bretonnia as well. The story that we never hear about the Great War against Chaos is what happened anywhere other than Kislev. They pretty much go, oh, well, it's Kislev, wasn't it? Kislev, the battle for Kislev Gates. That's all that matters. And this is something Games Workshop itself has often focused on. If you take a look at, say, Empire at War, which was a book by Black Library, and its entire focus for the Great War against Chaos is the battle for Kislev Gates. It's got a big double-spread map in there, which I did. That's why I remember it so well. And it's got a big double-page spread map in that. But that's pretty much Azavar Cool, Kislev. Azavar Cool, Kislev. It's going to be super cool to see all of their new version of Kislev and all of their new version of Norska fall. It's going to make the entire war feel more like an enormous war rather than what amounted to a single battle at Kislev after they took Prague. It's going to feel huge.
Yep, so this is, of course, where Fridal the Chainmaker, which is the really, really badass Norskin Chaos champion, who's the major figure of the new Arcane Journal. This is her home port. Talks about how it's grown very heavily in worth and power because she's raiding Westerland a lot. And in the Arcane Journal, she's actually captured part of the Westerland and has set up a base and is trying to hold on to it, which is cool. I like how far these Norskin dwarfs are. Kreka Ungrim is deep in Norska.
Yeah, I'm also interested to see what they're going to refer to them, because I've not paid that much attention to the literature that's gone around the potential. Oh, they've called it explicitly. It's called out in the map, Norse. Okay, because Norse dwarfs is an old term and has been kicking around for ages, but there was a period through the 2000s where they didn't want the term Norse used because it was a real world term. That was the Norse who came from the north. And they wanted instead Norskin to be used because they came from Norska. And the idea of anyone from Norska should be Norskin. So it would be Norskin dwarfs. And I remember there was some significant pushback from various writers with like, but they've always been called Norse dwarfs. We can't just call them Norskin dwarfs now, can we? So you're going to find that it's, for me, super fascinating to see the word Norse used. That suggests that perhaps we have ourselves Norse. Not just Norskins, but Norse. No. In a way that we weren't allowed to write about for a period of time.
Do like the Ulfwinnar Mountains,
yeah,
so your Skimble Mountains. But they did keep the Earthsfjord, which, if you watch my most recent Norska video, that's where the Werebeards like to come from.
I love to see the Goramadni still there. Yep. That was I had a small discussion, that'd be the best word, about the naming of the Goromadni, because there was a desire to not name anything in the World's Edge Mountains anything other than the World's Edge Mountains. And I had to basically pull out examples of where there was lots of local names for different parts of the mountains. And they went, okay, yeah, you can call it the Goromadni then. But yeah, we had a discussion about that one. Nice to see the Goromadni are still there, because that's a name that's been dropped in multiple places.
Yep, we got the Varg tribe, fearsome Norskins devoted to the worship of the ruinous powers. The Varg are shrouded in myth and legend, and they're reputed to be among the most bloodthirsty of the Norskin raiders. So they're super spooky. Doom Keep, dominating a mountain pass in the center of Norska. The Doom Keep is a mighty watchtower that stands vigil over the route through the hills. From this mighty fortress, its occupants venture out to nearby lands to raid and hunt. Very cool. Spooky monolith of Katam, which is sadly not clickable. We've got the Tower of Krak. This stronghold has long been used as a staging post for those looking to raid over land to Kislev for centuries. Despite the dangers of crossing Troll Country, the raiders return to the Tower of Krak each year, laden with riches and resources. One thing I like is that the Sarl Norse actually live in Troll Country past the borders of Kislev.
They always did.
And oh no, this actually confirms what Andy just said. They could be called Norse.
Yeah. And it does. It says it absolutely clearly.
Because they're
the
Norse
tribes.
They're the Sarl Norse.
Brilliant. Because that means that we can almost hark back all the way to Warhammer First Edition, the Tribes of the North, the Norsemen, and that's really, really old Warhammer. There was a fight, I think, at some points during Games Workshop's history where they were trying to make everything feel like it wasn't really the real world. So anything real world adjacent got removed. But yeah, right here, it's all been added back in again. So whoever was part of that fight has lost.
Here's a tribe Andy will enjoy. The Sarl tribes, renowned builders of the wolf ships. The Sarl tribes spend as much time on the sea as they do land, though they will often raid coastal towns and cities. The Sarl also trade with the people of the old world and are still welcomed into many ports to ply their wares of furs, ivory, and timber. Awesome.
Yeah, if you go, if you check out the old map that I did for Kislev, you just type map Kislev, you'll probably find it. It's a sort of orangey, yellowy looking map that was done for Realm of the Ice Queen. You'll see the Sarl Norse are all the way across the top. We had, if we go take a look at Kislev, pull out, I'll give a little bit of Kislev history, super short, but it's worth noting. When I was first contacted to write Kislev, the borders for Kislev stopped at Prague. They did not go any further north. And the borders on the eastern side stopped at the World's Edge Mountains. And on the western side, it was the Kislev Verge, which is that red dotted line that's making its way between the Empire side and the Kislev side. It was a small triangle in comparison to what I thought it probably should be, given where Games Workshop had taken the north. So I sent off an email that can be summed up as this. Troll countries in the north, I think it should be part of Kislev. I think it is the great borderland between Norska in the north and Kislev that sits there. And it's a place where there's Sarls, they're going to war. It's where the spring drivings come down with various Norskan attacks that come from that area. But it should be a bigger area. The northern oblast, as it marks there, should be above. And I got effectively given the Tobol, which might be marked as a river there, River Tobol. As the northern border. Okay, so if you notice there, it starts at what they mark as Maja Ovemny, and it moves up to Zoyschenk, up to Fort Ostrosk, Fort Kaminsky, and that's why in that area there's a whole bunch of places marked. And I went, yeah, this isn't good enough. I want more. Can I please have some further settlements in the north, like Lebia, like Dazhin, because these ones are sort of loosely referenced in places, and I would like to have Ungols up there too. And they eventually went, yeah, sure. So I managed to extend the borders of Kislev from what used to be a tiny triangle in the area that Prague was the most northern spot to far more territory all the way up to what was effectively Norska. And it changed the perspective of what Kislev was entirely. So when they came to taking that up when they moved to Total War, they pretty much just went, yeah, that's Norse territory, which beforehand was a super, super controversial argument. When I suggested that all of Troll Country lay within areas that the Kislevites wanted to claim, the general opinion was no, too far north. The Kislevites are nowhere near there. And I was like, yeah, nah.
Yeah,
If you look at my original map, you can see Kislev is still, as a word, written quite far south. On this map, it would be beneath. If you scroll down a bit, it would be, if we've got the main river and it goes up to Bolgasgrad, it's just beneath Bolgasgrad is where I wrote the word Kislev, because that was almost the center of where it went to. Nowadays, the word Kislev would be up about, in fact, it would be right about where they've written Tungranich, whatever, the Northern Oblast.
Yeah, it's awesome to see that Kislev's borders feel natural.
Huge.
It's literally a geographical thing that cuts them off, where they push up against this giant river flowing down from the mountains, and you could tell these are the Norse dwarf lands. That's what really stopped them. Was that the Norse dwarfs control this territory.
And then when we move towards the end times, this is an area that is in constant warfare. So
yeah, they're going to have a bad time.
The forts that they've got marked at the top there would all have fallen and never be reclaimed. Interestingly, Fort Stragov, if you go with the initial story of Fort Stragov, won't exist for another 150 years. But they've just brought it back and they've added it in. And that's totally cool because the Stragovs are in that land. So perhaps it's been built, it's fallen, and it gets rebuilt again. I think that works perfectly.
Yep. All right, let's wrap up Norska stuff real quick, and then we'll go back into Super Chat. More Star, not to be confused with Morskatar.
Very different thing.
Yeah, I do like there's a Skaven settlement on here, Black Gulch, where they say this deep valley was formed long ago by glacial runoff and a now dried up river. The depths of the gulch, a subterranean network of tunnels, worms its way through the rock and has become home to all manner of creatures, both monstrous and cowardly. Who could that be? My biggest hope is that as like the advances forward in editions, I really hope they do a fucking Zylok. Thank you, Zylok. I really hope they like bring back at least one legacy faction per expansion until we get them all back. Like they don't have to bring them all back at once, but like bring them back as they become relevant to what's going on. Really hope that's the case.
Thank you, Zylok. You rock.
All right, Andy, we're now going to jump into the one that's controversial.
We go to the
because
Empire.
No. We're still in Norska. There's one last place that I really want to look at because I interpreted this one way, and a lot of people disagreed with me and thought I was dumb. Okay. And I'm curious. I'm going to read it out to you, and I just want you to give me your take on what it is. I'm not going to tell you my take. So you're ready.
Okay.
So we have the Forbidden Citadel, and this says, overlooking the frozen sea, this mighty fortress was a bastion of strength even before the influence of chaos began to taint the region. Over the centuries, tribal chieftains have fought and died to claim ownership over the fortress. But now it is the champions of chaos who war amongst themselves for control of the fortified position.
Okay, well, that sounds freaking ancient. If you take it at face value, that suggests almost like that suggests Malekith finding the Circlet of Iron old. A similar ancient possibly even pre-cataclysm, and repurposed again and again and again over the millennia.
So I'm going to tell you what I got out of this, and
what did you get out of it?
And you let me know if you think I'm dumb. And it's cool if you do. It's totally fine if you do. So because it specifies,
I think you're dumb if you are.
Probably. Yes, yeah. And I love you for that. And I love you for that because I will also say that your takes are stupid.
Yeah, and I'm cool with that.
So we have the Bastion of Strength even before the influence of chaos began to take the region, which is huge. That means it's been here for fucking ever. Yeah. But then it says, over the centuries, tribal chieftains have fought and died to claim ownership over the fortress, but now it is the champions of chaos. Yep. So what I interpreted this as, and what got me excited, is to me this suggests that Norska was not a chaos-corrupted hellscape when Sigmar initially chased them up here. That it's gradually gotten worse and worse and worse and worse, and that the Norskins in Norska have a history of chaos used to have significantly less influence than it now does. That there was a pre-chaos Norska Norskins.
You know what? I don't think that's dumb at all. I actually quite like it. I quite like it. I quite like it because there is a huge problem with modern Warhammer and its timeline. and how it makes sense of its Everchosens, the cycle of Everchosen, the amount of power that Chaos has managed to wield over its cycle of incursions, and how deep they have gone and how much trouble they have caused. And it used to make sense. It used to make a lot of sense, because we started off with the very first incursion of Chaos, with the first Everchosen. And that was millennia ago. And the world moved in cycles that sped up with each incursion, until eventually we had the Great War against Chaos 200 years approximately before the end times, and then the end times. And that was a short span. And the one before that was maybe 300. The one before that was maybe 400. The one before that was maybe 500. You get the idea. Going back to Sigmar's time, and then before it with even bigger gaps. That made sense. But now we have 13 Everchosens that we have to somehow fit between the time of Sigmar and the end times. And it no longer makes sense, because there was meant to be the gap between the Great War against Chaos and the arrival of the 13th Everchosen was meant to be tiny. That was meant to be a small gap. Now it's a really big 200-year gap in comparison to the ones that came before. If we go 200 years times 13, that's more time than we ever have to the time of Sigmar. It's 2,600 years instead of 2,500, which means Chaos is weak as all hell. And it's really weak before the time of Sigmar. It's almost like the great incursion of Sigmar that Sigmar faced was the first really big attack since the Cataclysm. It no longer makes sense in the way it once used to. But if we want to accept that version of the Warhammer world where Morkar, the first Everchosen, faced Sigmar, if we want to accept that, this makes sense.
Yeah, because for
100% makes sense as an ancient site that wasn't held by Norskins, that was possibly held by an ancient civilization pre-Norskin. And then the Norskins arrive, and over the course of multiple attacks, eventually they creepingly get taken over until a few centuries earlier, perhaps during the attack of the previous Everchosen. Because we know when the previous Everchosen happens, because it's the Mortime time, 300 years. Doesn't make sense with the timeline. Shh, don't think about it. 300 years, Mortime time. And this all makes sense to that. I would agree with you. I think it's good.
Yeah, because for me, I think it actually allows there's a lot of text about how, like, oh, every time there's an Everchosen and Chaos attacks, the Chaos waste and its influence gets a little further, and a little further, and a little further. So the idea that Norska wasn't that bad, but over the last 2,500 years, it's got, as the Chaos waste have reached further and further down, it's gotten worse. And I was really excited by that.
Yeah, I'm 100% behind that. In my personal view, if I was to, for example, be given, hey, Andy, you can now write the 13 Everchosen. My first Everchosen would happen during the first Cataclysm.
Oh, yeah, I agree.
And it would be a core component of Chaos realizing they're on the losing back foot. And they have to make choices they would never have made when they were absolutely slaughtering everything. And that's what I would do. But I'm not in control. And instead, we have a bunch of stories that have been made up that completely change that timeline. And that change of timeline, this makes sense with. And I think would work perfectly with your interpretation of it. So yeah, right. I'm sold. I don't think it's a crazy theory at all. I think it rocks.
All right, let's do some super chat stuff, and then we're gonna get into the weeds.
The weeds.
Let's see. We were here we go. How often do Chaos invasions occur at this time? Maybe to make Asvar cooler on why Chaos invasions occur more regularly due to the bringing down Kislev and Norse dwarves, which were superpowers. So, I mean, the term Chaos invasion is a little bit misleading because there's like, oh, there's raids, and there's so a good example. There's the spring drivings. Every spring, like little war bands and stuff come out of the north as the spring thaws, the various winter passes, and the frozen bays crack open so the ships can set sail again. So every year there's what you could call a Chaos invasion, but most people that like live in Chaos or Kislev would look at you and say, that's not a Chaos invasion, that's just the spring driving.
And it is worth noting that as you get closer to one of the great incursions of Chaos, they become much more frequent and they become bigger. So it's not just, a tribe is attacking a local village and they're having to hold off against a small group of invading clansmen attempting to take resources, we are talking invasions every single year. And when we hit the end times, Kislev is being invaded every year until eventually the arrival of, well, the Everchosen. And it's not just an invasion, it's a proper incursion to wipe out the world. But yeah, at this period of time, we are in between the 12th Everchosen and, no, sorry, the 11th Everchosen and the 12th. The 11th Everchosen that happened approximately 2000, and the 12th Everchosen that will happen approximately 2300. Okay, so 300 years between them. And we are getting closer and closer to the 2300 one, which means in this period, chaos invasions are on the rise. They are on the up. And this is largely the direction they've taken in the old world, where they say their chaos powers have been sort of shattered and they're all sort of broken and fragmented and they're doing various things, but they're all beginning to build up now. Oh yeah, it's going to be bad. And that's loosely what we're heading towards. So at this point, invasions, as we understand it, haven't quite reached the frequency that we would have, for example, during Karl Franz's era, where they were coming every single year from around about 25, let's say about 15 onwards. And I mean invasions, not just small raiding bands. Before that, it's lots of raids. And somewhat similarly, it's lots of raids all over the place, but we don't have the full-scale invasions that will be coming very soon.
Let's see. We've got. Is there a Warhammer Persia / Zoroastrian element?
At best, some of that gets wrapped up into bits of Araby, but even then, it's not particularly well handled. There's also parts of the idea of particularly some of the old Persian civilizations wrapped up into Chaos Dwarves of all places. But again, it's not really there. It's something that is missing in Warhammer World, and that is pretty much anything that lies outside the borders of old Europe.
So feel free to make your own, and maybe it'll become real one day.
Yeah, it's something that I feel could definitely do with a little bit of extra detail.
Darius Rose, considering how most Chaos tribes near the waste are horsemen, such as the Kurgan, how come in most invasions they're foot soldiers? Just gameplay could maybe be a terrain thing. Also, what's the scariest tribe here?
So they aren't.
Yeah.
That's it.
I'm going to let Andy talk for a second while I use the rest of the effects.
Yeah, loosely speaking, whilst the Kurgan may be horsemen, they are far from the only Chaos tribes that are coming. And the vast majority of the ones that are coming are often, say, coming through Norska and similar, where the great horse tribesmen of the north are not going to be anywhere near as effective as the locals would be at getting across those terrains. The vast majority of the northern tribes are often depicted not as horsemen, but as basically troopers, your warriors of chaos, your chaos marauders. Many of them are horsemen, but they're often the ones that are viewed as the ones from the steppe to the east. But they are by far not the majority of the chaos tribes. The vast majority of the chaos tribes are generally described as being almost the opposite. Chaos knights, sure. Chaos marauders on horses, sure. Most of them coming from the eastern side. All the rest are generally depicted as being foot troops.
Yeah,
having said that, there's still tons of horsemen around.
Yeah, I always found it really weird and kind of dumb that the Kurgan, I felt like that was a mistake that just kind of never got corrected, because it's like the Hung are supposed to be the horse tribe.
Yeah, I know.
Where they're like the steppe ponies and they live like out on the open steppe and they're always moving around. And then somebody came in and went, oh, well, the Kurgan's also a horse tribe. And it's like, why?
Yeah, the northern tribes have been sort of messed up by different writers taking different angles, and it's not for the best always.
Yeah, and that's also to go into that there are people that have genuinely swapped where the Kurgan and the Hung are supposed to be. I've seen that happen multiple times.
Yeah, me too.
So I find
makes it hard to decide which one to do. It's why, generally speaking, whenever a writer comes along and they're told, here you go, you're writing about this thing, Games Workshop always say, what's the latest version of the army list? That's the one you shall not transgress. So in the case of, say, the Chaos, it would be the Chaos Warriors from the 8th edition.
Yeah, because generally, like, the way that I understood it when I was kind of just reading the lore very casually from my personal readings is that the Norskins were the mostly kind of Viking barbarian hordes that raid by sea and that you see the most of, and they're like most of your marauders. The Hung were your horsemen, and they were very focused on horseman type styles, and the Kurgan we're always spoken about that, like, of the Warriors of Chaos, a significant number of the Warriors of Chaos in like the heavy armor are Kurgan. That they're this super far northern tribe that are super heavily armored because they live up where the shit's ugly, and so they become like big bad Chaos Warriors more often.
Yeah, and there's quite a lot of horse lore for that. I mean, you could tie them into a whole host of real world tribesmen. I've seen various attempts to pull in Magyars. I've seen various attempts to pull in various Goths that are far more Scandinavian in origin. I've seen various attempts by various writers to claim they're one thing or another thing. And often it's also, I had one person, I'm desperately convinced it was the Allens. I had a big long discussion about that one. But broadly speaking, they're not. They are the Chaos tribes, and making direct analogues, unless you're dealing with, hey, for example, the Norse, where the direct analog is more obvious, or arguably the Hung, is often going to be falling into either just making it up yourself, or alternatively, adding something that was never there. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just that Games Workshop, because they haven't defined it firmly themselves, or at least that's how it appears, we are then left with a variety of different versions of what they might end up being.
Yeah, it's actually, now that you've kind of pointed out, it's one thing that's kind of interesting to me is they don't actually have the Kurgan and the Hung on this map.
Yeah, I know, they vanished. I noticed that earlier when I was...
Yeah, and it could be that they're just saying like, oh yeah, the Hung are too far east, so they're not on this map, and the Kurgan are too far west, so they're over this way. But they're not on the map, which is actually really interesting.
I want to bring up a comment by Erska here, which I think is quite interesting. Some of the Kurgan tribes are literally named after Turkic tribes. You're right, the Dolgans, the Kazakhs, like the Kazakhs. And you're absolutely spot on, but the problem is the people writing about it often don't know anything about real world history. Literally nothing. They don't do research. They just go, oh, these are Chaos Warrior types, and they write a thing. And the only thing, often because they are English speaking, very Western European writers, the only thing they really know about the East is generally the Mongols. So they make everyone a Mongol, regardless of what their name may or may not come from. And I cannot express to you how much that is a thing. How everything that goes east of, in terms of the maps here, the World's Edge Mountain just turns into a Mongol. Regardless of the great depth of different cultural backgrounds they could draw from, they just turn them into the only thing that they're broadly aware of. And it means that ultimately the versions of the Chaos tribes that we get are often much blander than they potentially could be.
Yeah, and I'll also say that I'm not ever going to accuse a specific person of doing this, but I know that talking to some people that there have been times where you'll get a writer that's like, oh, I need like a Chaos tribe, and they'll go Google like ancient warrior tribe, hit enter, and just look for a cool name, be like, that one. And won't actually research them or anything. They'll just go, that sounds cool, I'm going to just rip that.
Yeah, I'm going to bring up a couple of these comments as well, because I think it's spot on. Surely people in the UK can learn about the Huns too. Well, yes, they absolutely can, but they don't. Generally speaking, when we come to the education system over here, they only take a couple of highlights outside of the UK, meaning that the vast majority of the English-speaking writers from the UK, at the very least, get taught none of the wider European history, meaning they've got nothing to draw upon within their own educational background, meaning that the only way that they're going to have that is if they go and do the research themselves. And often when someone's picked up to do a job of writing for Games Workshop or some seller, they already think they know. So they don't research, they just write Warhammer as they think that it is. And it means that they draw upon the cultural elements that they are loosely aware of. Now, I'm not saying all of them do that. In fact, a good chunk that I know literally do research, and they get a deep cultural diversity. Unfortunately, some of those, though, just copy-paste names. They don't make new names. They don't make Warhammer equivalents. They just go, oh, that tribe that I've just learned about. And nobody knows about that one because I'm the only one that's researched this. I'll just copy-paste it over. And anyone from that part of the world goes, oh, they're just like, that's what? But that's just a real world thing. It'd be like, I don't know, saying the Picts live in Albion. As an equivalent. You can't just have Picts in Albion because that's a real world thing. But that's often what happens. So you'll find that the further you get away from the cultural centre of Warhammer, which is in many respects the UK, the more they just copy paste bits in and don't understand what they're doing. Some writers are much better at this, but some are not.
Yeah, I just want to pull up this, that from an American perspective, if you walked up to any American, you said, What's the difference
Yeah.
between the Mongols and the
Good one,
Huns?
David.
They would look at you and go, I thought those were the same thing.
Yeah.
Like that is the response you would get.
Yeah, I in my case, one of the reasons why I had already a very not deep but definitely broad understanding of this was because I had come from a long background of playing Vampire the Masquerade. Our campaign had started in Roman times and gone across all of Europe through all of that time, all of the invasions, everything that happened throughout all of both what is right over to Siberia over on the far side, the whole lot. And that had given us a great depth of understanding of all the various groups and peoples of the time. So when I came around to doing Warhammer writing, I already had it like just a ton that I could draw upon and then go look it up online if I wasn't sure about a certain thing. So I was relatively lucky because of my previous experience in other games. But most writers aren't, and they either research it for themselves or they don't, and they just make it up.
Yeah, and then in answer to your last thing about who's the scariest tribe here, it's probably going to be the Cool tribe because Asvar Cool comes from the Cool tribe. So they're probably going to be the big bads because they're about to produce an Everchosen. Is it possible for the Hung for a Hung appearance in the old world? Yeah, I would say so. Yeah. When they do Cathay, I would be shocked if they did not have a lot of Hung tribes to the north of the wall.
Oh, you got the Tong there as well. Oh,
yeah. Yeah. They've got some fun tribes here. The Dolgums, the Tong. The Tong is fun to see because the Tong are when you read they're spooky in the Tome of Corruption. They're very spooky.
Yeah, definitely.
Zylock tipping the show support and Block Dark Deeds. Well, thank you very much for that.
Yeah, indeed. Already have tipped myself a drink because of that. Thank you very much. Zylock.
Let's Lord Chris. Zarlaw, one of the greatest czars to expand expanded Kislev's borders. Yes, the great almighty Zarlaw. I remember him.
I did indeed significantly expand it, which is one of the reasons I was so hugely excited to see it expand even further over the mountains. I was a proponent of a slightly different version of Kislev when I was writing it, and it's lovely to see other writers coming along and saying, actually, I'm going to take what came before and expand it much further. For me, that's exciting.
It is very cool to see the Empire go from being like, haha, we're the big boys, to Kislev being like, no, sit down.
Yeah, I think it's super cool. It also speaks to where Kislev... I mean, Kislev is a new nation in the greater scheme of things, in the old world scheme. So it's really nice to see what was much bigger and the idea that it was crushed by Azavar Kul. I am really looking forward to what I hope will be the absolute annihilation of Kislev and the central point of the power that it has at this point. For me, that is going to be a great story. I will be sorely disappointed if they don't properly burn this place to the ground.
I hope Games Workshop makes non-Norse chaos, Nippon chaos. It'll be interesting to see what GW is going to go doing forward because they have enough set up that they could introduce that as being a notable thing. It's like, and they don't have to go crazy with it. Like, it doesn't need to be its own standalone army, but it'd be nice for them to be like, oh, here are rules for running certain types of Marauder Norscan units as allies with your Empire army, because there are non-chaos ones that are sympathetic and stuff like that.
Bring up this comment. It's TZAR. It's actually TSAR.
There you go. Strigoi boy, as far as I can recall, Chaos is always on the offense. Would you be opposed to them being on the defense for a change? And that's what could possibly stop the infighting. I defend X or Chaos would shrink, except for so I will say that Age of Sigmar has this as a core theme where you have like Chaos on the defense. And I think there are elements. The old world is doing an interesting job of setting up for this, where like Friedal the Chainmaker is actually expanding her empire, where she has taken over a little town somewhere in the wasteland, and she is like set up base. Like, she sent for reinforcements. Reinforcements are on the way. She's fortifying. She's trying to genuinely take territory in the empire, which means she's going to be on the defensive against the armies of Westerland, which would be really cool, depending on how far they're going to go with that storyline. But, like, I think for all of Chaos in the old world, I don't think that's the theme the old world's going to go for.
Agreed. And loosely speaking, chaos is often on the defensive, often from chaos, but often from greenskins, often from outside parties. And there are frequent attacks into the chaos waste by, say, dark elves, by other Norse tribes, and similar. So don't think that they are never on the defensive. They often are. It's just that the core components of most of the stories that are told are chaos finally making their big final assault. And just to make sure that I am definitely clear, on the Tsar, it's TZAR. I've just checked my notes from what I was given at the time. Always TZAR. TSAR if you're referring to outsiders and how they might spell it. CZAR, literally never ever use that. So that's what my guidelines used to be. But of course, as Games Workshop ages and changes things might change.
All right, so to the Empire, because there are things to be said, and they've added new clickable buttons.
Just because I would like to pull up one comment slightly outside. I do think Warhammer Fantasy is at its best when it's tongue-in-cheek referencing real-world events like the Black Plague. I broadly agree, because it not only gives us something that's immediately accessible, that we as people can say, oh, that's like that, which makes you immediately go, oh, I understand Warhammer, because Warhammer's like this. You get then the Warhammering of it, which is dialing it up to 11 and making its own unique thing. So it's no longer just a simple nod or a reference. It's now become something new, something that's very Warhammery. And I think Warhammer does this very well. And that's broadly what I think is the case for, say, the tribes or anything similar. They should take... Not necessarily they should, but they should definitely be influenced by the real world and then Warhammerifying it and turning it into something that's bigger. And the earlier comments I was making about how this often fails is because many of the writers are so limited culturally that they only really understand British history and some highlights of, say, Napoleonics, or possibly the arrival of the Mongols, or maybe something like the Romans. Romans are very big in the UK because, hey, they're British, aren't they? Yeah. And they're taught very heavily in the UK. But beyond that, it just sort of falls off an edge, meaning that all the references that they draw upon, then Warhammer it up, tend to be the high cultural touch points from the UK perspective. But the broader stuff is just lost and isn't used. And that's something that I feel is to its detriment. So I agree with you, but it would be nicer if we got a bit more of it.
Yeah, it dials into that thing that me and Andy always talk about on here, that some person in the comment section will always misinterpret and be like, oh, Andy and Sotek are so woke. Where we're like, people, you should understand what you're talking about. You shouldn't just pull it out of your ass and like pick it because it's a cool sounding name and not delve into a lot of research and speak to someone that's actually an expert on the subject. To make sure you understand it. Like, the problem is when people wing it, and also when they wing it and don't add the and part of Warhammer, where, you know, you need to do you need to dial it up to 11. You shouldn't just copy paste something from history without a proper understanding of it, because otherwise you're going to end up with something that sucks.
Yeah, okay, so looking at these locations, Hagendorf is approximately where Hagenfell should be. Dietershaven has been moved along the coast. Emskrank shouldn't exist yet, but hey, let's say that it does, but it is in the right place. Norden is almost exactly where it should be, sitting on the border with what will become one day the modern version of Ostland. So that's great. Beakerhaven is so much further south, it's almost hilarious.
We actually have new clickable prompts. These are new. So at the Forest of Shadows, bandit outposts are common in the Forest of Shadows, while Twisted Cultists move south with the Chainmaker to raid isolated settlements in search of blood sacrifices. Is she in the Forest of Shadows? I thought she was in the Wasteland, but I guess not. I'd have to double check the book. We can click the Middle Mountains. Looming over the old forest road as it passes through the Dracwald Forest, the Middle Mountains provide a natural barrier that allows Mindenheim and Wolfenburg to thrive in their shadows.
Yeah, I'm amused by some of the choices made here, because they've kept some bits in, missed other bits. The Howling Hills, for example, if we take a look at that, that's sitting underneath what they call Osterland. The Howling Hills are smaller. The Howling Hills are much larger in most other iterations. If we move into the heart of Osterland, so this is the bit between the two rivers. One river starts at Wolfenburg at the top and goes down to the river Talabek just above Talabheim, and the other river is to the side of Hergig, which they've moved significantly, by the way. Hergig is on the river on almost every other map that goes from Wolfenburg down to Talabheim. So they have shifted it along there. I can tell you what city is normally there. It's a city by the name of Vatzel. So they've replaced Vatzel with Hergig on this particular map. What's also kind of fun with this one is that in the center of the bit that says Osterland there's a big area of hills called the White Hills that are entirely barren. But no, they don't exist here at all. But that's cool because things change over time. The one that's really just wrong is in Talabheim. So if we go a little bit further south, we've got Talabheim and we've got the Barren Hills. Now, the Barren Hills...
Didn't be that yet.
The Barren Hills isn't the Barren Hills at the moment. It's a place called the Green Hills, or the Grunhugel. It's called the Barren Hills because warpstone will literally fall upon this part of the world at some point in the future. Approximately 100 years or so, or something like that. So it's quite a bit of time before now. And it lands in there, and the Green Hills become the Barren Hills. So that's a misname. The Farlek Hills and the Kulsa Hills, they're totally fine. The Great Forest having its line all the way over there is interesting. And the Great Forest is all of Talabheim, but hey, it's a choice.
It's clickable. Dark and twisted things lurk between the canopy of the Great Forest, preying upon unwary travelers. Lumber operations are guarded by Talabheim huntsmen, sporting icons of Tal to ward against evil.
Nice. I'd like to say that Verzen is in pretty much the correct place, which is often not the case for these locations. Slaviansk, that's a new one. Beckhaven's embraced the right place. Kemner is replacing an older town that used to be in that area. I think it's called Geierwacht. Let me just double check. It is indeed called Geierwacht. So they've replaced Geierwacht with a town called Kemmer. Essen is, like, I suppose that's close enough to where it was before. Eisenthal, sure. Fortenhof is in the right place. Nagenhof is pretty close to where it is. All of these locations have been moved slightly. The Erie Downs have been moved south. It used to be further north. There's all manner of small changes with all of these. Sylvania has a completely different border where Van Halden's Schloss, which is in Sylvania, is outside of Sylvania.
Yeah.
I mean, Van Hal's Dance Macabre, one of the most famous undead spells, because Van Hal, who was a Sylvanian, Waldenhof, which is at the north
it could be that territory was like seized after the Vampire Wars or whatever.
Waldenhof is the capital of Sylvania and always has been. So that's been ignored. Zerden over on the other side is part of Ostermark. That's fascinating. Mordheim, the ruins of said thereof, where's that? Gone.
That's not on here right now.
Just not there at all. Lichberg, that's interesting. That should be marked. The Haunted Hills are in exactly the right place. That's lovely. Altern Forest is lovely. Mutland has entirely different borders. And when I say different, I mean massively. If you take a look at the where the rivers meet with the Blue Reach and the river by the Altern, that is the center of the Mutland. Where Eichstätten, the capital of the Mutland, that was made the capital like ages ago. Yeah, and that's the center of it, and they've moved it significantly.
The fact that there are mountains in the Mutland is crazy.
The whole thing is weird. Sigmaringen is in such a different place; it's ridiculous. It's like just an entirely different place. There's land where Krupp the Sixth is marked that is disputed between Averland and Sturland, which is now part of Mutland. I have no issue with Mutland having shifting borders, but I am a little bit bothered when the capital of Mutland, which has always been pretty much where the Stout Hearts and the various other important families of the Krupps, Mutland gathered, is now pretty much outside of the border of Mutland, and it sort of doesn't make sense. It bugs me, but nevertheless, that's where it's now sitting. The mixture of towns that you get in Averland, Heideck is in a completely different place. Beiswang is, oh dear. These are all in a mixture of different places, some of them based upon old Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 1 maps. Visenland is not Visenland's borders at all, but I can understand why they chose that option when you look at the old Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 1 maps, because they've almost gone with an attempt to, it just sort of doesn't work. Visenland just isn't there. Sudenland also, I mean, Sudenland being there is pretty cool, but Visenland being all the way over there is weird. And then we go up to Nuln, which is given a tiny little bit of territory, which is interesting. Reichland, Altdorf is the only place marked in it. Is that right? Well, you can't make mistakes if you do that. Oh, Griswold.
Griswold.
That's where Griswold should be. That's good. So if we look at the empire as a whole, about half of the locations have been moved. In some cases, a small amount. In some cases, a lot. Some exceedingly important locations have been completely ignored. Some other locations that are not important have been included because they clearly saw them on maybe a first edition fantasy map, or they saw them on another map that came from elsewhere. It's an interesting combination of different locations from different versions. The biggest one, though, is right back to the very coronation of of what the Empire currently is, where you've got Osterland, Westermark, Reichland, Westerland. All of that is new. This is an established period of time where none of those were the case. So Talabotland existed as in Reichland, as Middenland, and all those places, but they had been broken up into lots of smaller parts during this period, most of which were independently ruled. The Reichland section was called, in the previous version of the lore, the electoral counts, the electoral princes, or the electoral emperors. The ones to the north were called the Wolf Emperors, and the ones over to the east were the Ottolan Emperors, who ruled from Talabheim. Talabheim, which hopefully has got a crater around it. Does Talabheim have a crater around it?
See if I click on it. Does it? It's not marked, but we also it does
it's
say
not
that.
So
it does say it is.
Yeah, the crater is so big that you would see it on this map.
Because
the actual crater is over 100 miles on its perimeter. It's a truly huge place, which is at least 30 to 40 miles across at the crater point. So it doesn't matter that it's not depicted on this map. It's not depicted on most maps, but it is interesting to note. Is it not? It's Eye of the Forest. Does it say why? Claimed by the Ottolan?
Known as the Eye of the Forest, great city claimed by the Attilan Emperor. Talabheim is within a miles-wide crater.
They've made arguably a mistake here. It says the Ottilia Emperors. That would be like saying the Queen Elizabeth Emperors. Well, you wouldn't. You'd just say the Elizabethan. Okay, the Elizabethan Emperors, if you were using similar language.
They're missing an N there.
They're missing an N at the end there, where in every other book, and I've written some of these, I've actually drawn Attilia for one of Games Workshop books for Black Library. Attilia, who looked very much like a sort of version of Queen Elizabeth in that version. And it very much would be Attilian. But yeah, interesting that they're going for Attilia.
Now that you mentioned it, Chad, I am surprised they didn't put Uberstrike on this map. It's such a important city.
It's not that important, but I could totally see it being there. At this point,
let's check out these clickables.
Yeah, let's see what we've got, so I can whine about them.
Yeah, let's start up here and kind of work our way around. So I think only the big major cities, but all the forests weirdly are clickable. So you have the Griffin Wood. Lumber is a key export of Ostermark, making the Griffin's Wood integral to Ostermark's economy. Although safer than most forests in the Empire, groups of bandits from the north are common enough to require regular patrols beneath the wood's canopy.
This is bullshit. No other way of putting it. Take a look at the Empire. Look at the Empire. What would you say is its core component? Wood.
Yeah, I know. It's like
wood everywhere. Now let's go down. Drill into Ostermark, and what is it beside? Talabotland. Wood. Their version of the Kislev, full of wood. Their version of the Eastern Empire up there.
Maybe they're exporting to the dwarfs.
Yeah, it doesn't make a great deal of sense, particularly given that would involve transporting the wood upriver, which is notoriously difficult. You'd be better just using the forests that are already marked up there. Bechafen is normally, and indeed that area, the Griffin's Wood, is normally marked for having things like shipbuilding or barge building and similar. It's interesting they went with wood because it doesn't make a great deal of sense.
We also have the Deadwood. Its ominous name matches the sinister reputation for the Deadwood's a twisted forest that few dare venture into, and even fewer emerge from alive. Ooh,
okay, spooky. So Deadwood is normally to the south of Essen, so they've moved Deadwood's borders over, and it's particularly notorious for being haunted by the undead, largely because it borders with Sylvania.
Not anymore, it doesn't.
Not anymore. I can't believe the capital of Sylvania is outside Sylvania. That one just makes me laugh.
And then we have a shield of what is either a manticore, I assume, with
it's
a crown and sword of Ostermark. And this says lumber is the sole plentiful resource of Ostermark. With much of the province's population living in fortified towns along the edge of its forests. Sworn to Osterlund, numerous woes have been inflicted on Ostermark in recent centuries, leaving it a shadow of its former self.
Yeah, during this period in other books, Ostermark has been very much absolutely conquered by the Attilians, and they rule it. It is theirs. The Elector Count of what might have once been Ostermark or some equivalent is entirely under the control of the Attilians, to the point that when we eventually arrive in the modern eras in Karl Franz's time, Ostermark is not an electoral province because it's been so thoroughly beaten down. It's not until after Karl Franz's rule that it eventually becomes an electoral province again. So during this period, it's almost not even worth marking it on the map.
Yeah, I'm curious if they're going to go that direction, which I hope they do. I wonder if they're going to show us the Attilians kicking the shit out of them and taking over. Because right now it says they're teamed up with the Wolf Emperor.
Yeah, it's really weird. They're teaming them up with the Wolf Emperor is just absolutely contrary to everything that came beforehand. And obviously they're telling their own story. That's cool. But when they've already got an existing one, it seems strange that they've not just copy pasted the existing wars over.
Yeah, because they don't
basically. I'm going to create them myself from wholesale cloth.
They don't even have a shared border, which is interesting.
Yeah,
like
it's
split up by the Attilians. Let's see, we got the Great Forest, which more lumber operations. They really like the lumber over here. We also have the Bitter Eyes Greenskin tribe. Despite the constant threat of roaming bands of beastmen, the goblins of the Bitter Eyes tribe enjoy their frequent raids on the isolated frontier towns of Midland, harvesting them for resources and shiny trinkets.
Sure, why not? I'm not aware of any greenskins that were already in that area. Let me just double check what I've got up here.
They have a cool banner.
Oh yeah, there's a couple, but they're modern greenskin hordes, so it doesn't really matter.
Then we have Emperor
cool,
Sigismund, ruled by Sigismund Ulrich. Osterlund is one of the 4 great provinces to have arisen since the collapse of the empire. It encompasses large portions of Ostland, Hochland, and Midland. Also enjoys close ties with Ostermark in the east.
Yeah, so during this period, the Wolf Emperors of the North control Middenland, Nordland, Hochland in chunks, but most of that's ruled by the Ottilians in a previous version. So Hochland now moving over to the other side is new, and chunks of what is now called Ostland were part of it. But most
it seems like the Attilian emperors in general got really shrunk down.
Really shafted, yeah. They used to be by far the strongest parts. Also worth noting that during this period, in the previous version of the lore, and I do mean very recently previous version, Sigmar is banned as a deity in all of the Attilian Empire. They were so massively against the electoral empires who existed over in the east, and it's been like that for almost 1,000 years.
See, we have Mindenheim is clickable. Vast and impregnable, Mindenheim stands atop the Ulrichsburg, a impenetrable rock that dominates the landscape around it. It's also known as the City of the White Wolf in recognition of its patron god deity, the god Ulrich. It stands at the center of the cult of Ulrich throughout the old world.
All accurate. The term Ulrichsburg was added to the game during Warhammer 6th edition. Before that, it was always called the Fauschlag. But during Warhammer 6th edition, when Gav came in and was doing the writing for it, figured that the Fauschlag, like many of the more Germanized names, was perhaps not particularly palatable by the British English-speaking audience. So they went with the Ulrichsburg as an alternative name. They didn't ditch Fauschlag. Fauschlag is still a name that was used, but they used Ulrichsburg as the core name. So there you go. They've copied that one on, which is nice.
Yeah, we have the Dragwald Forest. The Dragwald Forest, the lair of beastmen who regularly terrorize Midland and Westerland. Few human settlements exist within it. Its largest settlement is Del Burs, which serves as a way station for trade between Altdorf and Mindenheim, which I feel like is an enemy within reference.
Yeah, and is also massively wrong if we go with any other version of Middenland, where Delberts is the previous capital and is one town amongst hundreds. Literally hundreds in Middenland. The Middenland is proliferated with towns all over the place. This used to be the Drakewald province itself, and Drakewald was massively wiped out during the big black plagues in the past. Afterwards, humans just fled in. The Teutigans, for example, the Middenlanders, they moved in, Middenheimers moved in, and they all moved in to fill these areas and populated what had been emptied beforehand, and it did recover. It's still a vast tract of uncontrolled land. The Drakewald is huge. The Drakewald's a massive forest, but
I guess things are going worse in this timeline.
But yeah, there are hundreds of towns and cities that have ancient histories in this area that have been now kicked out the door.
Yeah,
which is for me super fascinating. I have a very, very detailed map of this area. I mean, their one's missing tons of stuff that Games Workshop have added over time, but that's cool because they don't need any of that.
Let's see, we got the Wasteland.
Shrouded Isle is new, by the way.
Through the where?
The Shrouded Isle up at the top corner. That's
Oh yeah,
entirely
yeah,
new.
yeah, because that's where the Hyos hang out now.
Yeah, totally. That's an entirely new island. There was always depending on which map you go with, there was always a bunch of smaller islands dropped up in the northeast. But I think it was Rick Priestley who originally said, "Don't put anything in the north because it's at the edge of the map and that's difficult." And none of it was named. And when I was doing one of the maps up in the top corner, I did a couple of the islands up there, but nothing was anywhere close to that big. So that's an entirely new addition. I really quite like
I will
it.
say I really like that. One of the things this map, it's got its fair share of issues, but one of the things that it really gives me a strong vibe of that I really enjoy is it really feels like the map is not Empire centric.
Yeah.
Like it feels like they're like, fuck it, the Empire's kind of in the middle, but it's not even really the main focus. Which feels so nice compared to so many other maps that we've had, where the Empire and the strict borders of the Empire really felt like they demanded central focus. They had very strong main character syndrome.
Yeah, I agree completely, in fact. What does it say about the Wasteland there? They've called it the Barney of the Wasteland. Oh, no, it's Westerland, thank goodness.
Westerland. Yeah, Westerland.
I was about to cry. You can't call it Wasteland.
This suitably named expanse of salt marsh is a harsh and unforgiving place dotted with sparsely populated hamlets and farmsteads.
Yeah, that's. I mean, it's not really a salt marsh. The cursed marshes where it rather sits. That's not much of a development because it's always been a large area that was difficult to farm, but it's not necessarily an entire salt marsh. Or at least
We've got Magritta the Sixth, ruled by Elspeth Magritta the Sixth. Westerland is one of the 4 great provinces of the Empire. It's a wealthy and cosmopolitan state, able to field vast armies in the name of its ruler's claim to the throne of the Empire.
Yeah, it's an interesting choice to make that a primary faction. Given that it was 100% previous to this, part of the Electoral Empire. So it was Reichland and Westerland that worked together, and huge chunks of what used to be the Drakwold, which eventually becomes Middenland later, moving down towards Nuln, which had a love-hate relationship with the Electoral Emperors, but were always part of that process.
We have Marienburg. Marienburg sits at the mouth of the River Reich and is open to merchant vessels from across the world. Everything is for sale in Marienburg, making it the largest, richest, and most corrupt port city in the old world.
Sounds perfect.
Yep, we've got the Reichwald Forest. Orcs, goblins, and beastmen sheltered within the Reichwald Forest, raiding the many ships that sail down the River Reich and merchant caravans that travel between Altdorf and Bretonia.
Yep, totally seems safe. You'll find that the Reichwald, at later dates is often described as one of the most tamed of all the forests of the Empire. And by Karl Franz's time, it's the most tamed, but it's still a vast tract of untamed land.
The first thing Karl Franz has to do as emperor is deal with a giant forest goblin invasion.
Forest goblin invasion from the south, yeah, totally. So it's far from being anything close to tamed, but in terms of the horrors of the other great forests of the Empire, it's more tamed. There's lots of, come the modern version of it, there's lots of canals and similar that pass through parts of the Reichland. But at this point in its history, that is definitely not the case. Reichland very much comes to the fore after the rise of Magnus the Pious. Before this point, Reichland's biggest claim to fame is, broadly speaking, it's where Sigmar came from in it. And there are parts of the Empire that don't like Sigmar. Let's be relatively clear on that, but that's very much in the previous writings. I imagine in the old world, they will lean hard into everyone loves Sigmar, because after all, that's where Age of Sigmar's going.
We'll see. Carroburg. With a strong military tradition, Carroburg is home to both the illustrious Carroburg Greatswords and a chapter house of the Knights of the Blazing Sun. Cool.
Yeah, Knights of the Blazing Sun have been kicking around for ages there. It's not where they originally arrive. Mermith, as I recall, it's Mermith and Jake, who's the first, I think he's the first Blazing Sun. I need to check that. And he's actually from Visenland. But yeah, that's good.
Altdorf. Astride the confluence of the rivers Reich and Talabek, Altdorf is the seat of the Reichland princes, major claimants to the imperial throne. Traders and fortune seekers flock to Altdorf, as do pilgrims seeking blessings at the Grand Temple of Sigmar.
Couldn't ask for more. That'll do just perfectly.
Then we have Wilhelm.
That doesn't go against previous stuff.
Yeah, I can't tell what number that is. Wilhelm the something.
It looks like Wilhelm.
Maybe the 5th?
We have problems here.
I can't.
If it's
I can't
anything
zoom
other
in
than
enough.
the first, we have problems.
It could be a 1. I can't.
Okay, so
I can't
there
read
is
it.
famously an issue with the House of Holzwig-Schlieffen, which effectively becomes Karl Franz. It was Karl Franz's house, and depending upon how you name it, it could be called other things at different points. And that's in various novels referred to as the House of Second Wilhelm or the House of Third Wilhelm, because it starts with Emperor Wilhelm II. And that's sometimes marked as Emperor Wilhelm III. And there's an easy way to fix that. You just have the prince be Wilhelm III. So the Prince of Reichland was Wilhelm III, but the Emperor was Wilhelm II. Everything matches up quite nicely because we can have, or the other way around, depending on how you want to pitch it. It's super, super easy to fix. But if we have anything other than first or second here, we are diving into a gigantic contradiction for about, I would say, as many as maybe 80, 90 publications from Games Workshop that will refer to Wilhelm I and II coming. The second part, coming after this. So, yeah, that's a potential issue.
It's Wilhelm the something.
Yeah, I'm not sure what that number is. Really hard to tell.
The Grand Principality of Reichland. The Principality of Reichland occupies the ancient heartland of the Empire. Within its borders, the cult of Sigmar holds sway, yet despite its support, the princes of Altdorf who would claim the title of Emperor have never been recognized and are known derisively by their rivals as the Reichland Pretenders.
Yeah, that's new. The princes of Altdorf had frequently claimed the title of Emperor, and indeed, the Prince of Altdorf at the time of the Great War Against Chaos was the electoral emperor. So that's just entirely new. That was a Holzkrug who was, and he dies in that war. Magnus the Pious basically has to fill the Principality of Reichland because there's nobody to take that particular claimant. It's only a branch of the family.
They got 24 years to get their shit together.
Yeah, totally. They've completely changed that, and by this point there has been, I would guess, as many as maybe 50 Reichland emperors. There's been loads of them. Saying that they've never been recognized is at this point just nonsense.
Yeah, I assume they mean like in this particular era, but the wording's a little weird.
Super interesting to see that they've moved Karlberg into Reichland at this point, because Karlberg moves out of and into Reichland at various points. And I'm totally cool with it being part of Reichland at this point. Karlberg, though, in the later timeline, will be part of Middenland and will have nothing to do with Reichland at all. So that's a good detail. I like it.
Yeah, so then we have the Red Eyes, not to be confused with the Red Eye Night Goblins. These are the Red Eyes Goblins.
Of course.
Lurking within the forested foothills of the barren mountains and along the banks of the rivers Reich and Talbek, the goblins of the Red Eyes tribe plague the ships and barges that ply the waters of the Great River. So we've got goblin pirates. Are you okay?
Yeah. Goblin pirates are not unknown. In fact, if you take a look at all the details for Joseph Bugman, that's filled with goblin pirate nonsense all the way down through Visenland. So the idea of goblin pirates, who do indeed say often have high eye patches and peg legs, are 100% a core component of how goblins are often pitched inside the Empire. So yeah, that's totally cool.
The Grand Duchy of Talbek. Interesting. The largest. So apparently they are still the biggest.
Yeah.
The largest, yet the most disparate of the great provinces to have arisen from the ashes of the Empire. The Grand Duchy of Talbek is renowned for harboring numerous witches, warlocks, and secretive guilds.
This is so contrary to what came before that it's almost hilarious. This was previously arguably the strongest part of the broken, fragmented empire this time. At this point, the entirety of the empire is effectively, to use a much used term, balkanized. It has collapsed into not hundreds, but thousands of individual principalities, duchies, baronies, all of whom are loosely at war. It's known as beyond the Dark Ages. It's completely fallen apart, and it's meant to be at its weakest, but almost the shining pillar in this is the Ottoman Empire, which has held on to its power for over 1,000 years. So it's really strong. This entire thing feels like, in fact, literally as I was about to say it, somebody posts it. This feels like it's been written by a Sigmarite. And yes, it kind of does. Although if it was written by a Sigmarite, they'd have put more strength on Altdorf and claiming that Altdorf has always been a centre of rule, where I imagine they might claim a lot of that has moved to Nuln.
Yeah, funny enough, the most flattering description actually is Magritta's. Marienburg got
Yeah,
the
it's
most
interesting.
flattering thing so far. But let's see what the others have to offer.
And as
we
Empress,
have Ludwig the 12th.
of course we do. And he's given a very green man symbol, which is interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very kind of the Green Knight.
Yeah.
We got the
Leibwitz.
The Leibwitz rules Nuln. Nuln stands as a free state within the heart of the Empire. Its political and military influence secured by the city's vast forges, which supplied the Empire's provinces and states with shipments of artillery and firearms, no matter who their foes may be.
Okay, so this is, again, if we take the previous lore as right, this is wrong, but it's not because it's rewriting the previous lore. The Leibowitzes come to power afterwards. The Leibowitzes consolidate their power during the reign of Constantine, who predates Emmanuel von Leibowitz by like a generation. And before that, they had to scrabble for the power, but they have been a ruling family in and around Nuln for ages. So you could claim that they take power at this point and then lose it again and come back without breaking any background. So not necessarily wrong. But the one bit that's definitely different is claiming that it's a city-state that is separate to and is not part of the electoral process, which had always been part of the electoral process with Reichland and a bunch of others, and they would elect an emperor between them, but it was still a unique city-state. And there was an emperor, much like there'd be an emperor far later, over that group of states in that area who had almost no power. It's also missing an entire province here, where there was a separate province called Vorbergland, which sat to the south of Reichland and almost butts up to Nuln. It's an entirely different province, much like Sylvania is a separate part. Sylvania is just part of Stirland under most versions of the maps. In the same way, Vorbergland is just part of Reichland in most versions of the maps. But at this point, Vorbergland is ruled by a king. And he is exceedingly powerful, so powerful that the cult of Sigmar have absolutely recognized him. And this isn't just 1 or 2 books, this isn't about 10 books. Various points will mention the strength of the Vorbergland during this point in history. So it's interesting to see that they've basically pushed aside many of the previous books and they've gone, we're just going to basically simplify it, keep it nice and easy for this version.
We have Kohler the 4th in Averland. Averland is large areas of fertile land, ideal for growing crops, land highly sought after by its neighboring provinces. Raids by orc warbands camped in the Black Mountains are a common source of strife in Averland.
So fertile, yeah, that's fair.
It seems that they're up with the
the Cooler bloodline actually comes from Visenland and comes from in and around the Visenberg area, as you can see on that map here. Visenberg is just in the wrong place entirely. Visenberg is like so wrong, it's amusing how far away it is. It should be on the river. It's not on the river. But anyway, the Coolers are an established line from that part of the world. They're mentioned in a bunch of places. There are a ton of families that have been described in Averland, all of whom have been ruling or next to rulership for centuries. And to not use one of the existing lines suggests that they're just building either their new story or haven't read any of the previous stuff, all of which is cool. There's no right way to do this when you're building your own world for your own game. But in this case, there was a lot of potential Averlander lines they could have gone with, but instead they've just gone with a name that means, well, if you know what cooler means, it just means they're a charcoal burner. It's one of the most common low-born names you can get, and they've decided to elevate it up to effectively electrocount status. That in and of itself is a fascinating choice, one that I don't imagine they'll think too much about.
We also have Stirlin with Ingelweiss the 9th. Ingelweiss, the 9th. Though it still bears the ravages of the Vampire Wars, vast amounts of trade flow through Stirlin down this river Stir. The waterway is patrolled by the Stir River Patrol, who protect travelers and enforce tolls and tithes.
Yeah, I mean, that's fine. I'm going to call out one other thing as well. Cooler the Third. They appear to be going for a mixture of first and last names here. Ludwig, that's a first name. Cooler is not. Cooler is a house. House name. Leibowitz is a house name, not a first name. Wilhelm, however, is a first name. Royals don't have last names. They've got households. So if you're in, for example, the UK, it's the House of Windsor. And the Queen or the King of the UK does not have a last name. It's like Elizabeth or Charles, maybe a bunch of other names as well that are added to this, but they don't have a last name. If they choose to take a name for passports or whatever, it's generally their household that they put at the end. And the rule is named after their given name, the name that they choose for their regnal name. For example, the current king in the UK is Charles, and his regnal name is also Charles, which is nice. Here, we've got Wilhelm as a regnal name. Makes sense. Say Wilhelm the First. Perfect. Ludwig, perfect. Engelweiss, no, that's a household name. Wrong. Cooler, household name. Wrong.
Maybe they're
name.
not. Maybe
Wrong.
they're not elector counts, or they're not like.
It doesn't
royals.
matter. It's not how you mark the rulership of the particular areas.
Yeah, I don't know. It's weird.
It's a weird choice. They've got a mixture here, and it suggests that whoever's doing it either A, hasn't thought it out, which I think is probably the likely option, or B, has come up with a different set of rules for how they name things. And that's cool too, because the Empire at this point is proper broken. So the idea that they have lots of different types of name is totally fitting.
Yeah,
I have no
because
problems with it in
Osborne's
general.
just got Hoffman.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Sigismund up there. It's just Sigismund. It's an interesting mixture of first and last names that don't make a great deal of sense, particularly if we're in a time where everyone wants to try and claim they're the most important. I rule this area. I'm the king. I'm the most important. They would all be using regnal names. So yeah, it's an interesting mix.
We have the ruler of Sylvania, Threk. I think that's Threkvald, but with a V, not a W.
That's proper weird. The House of Drac has been ruling in that area for a long time. So it's interesting they've gone with a lesser family. There's also a host of very famous families in Sylvania, and I do mean very famous families. They basically made a new one up. They didn't need to. I can go look at my map of Sylvania. I can probably name about 10 of them just by looking down there. There's a bunch of them, and this is the weirdest Sylvania. It's like half the territory that Sylvania holds. Sylvania has always been a part of Stirland, so making it not part of it is cool. I like that. But making Sylvania smaller and not including the capital, Waldenhof, is a choice. It's a real choice. And making that part of Stirland and not Sylvania, or not its own unique place like a princedom of Waldenhof, that would work perfectly. We declare ourselves independent from the rest. But making it part of Stirland is a choice. Makes almost no sense.
Also, why is the Crooked Moon like this far north?
The gods alone know.
From Carrick 8 Peaks. They're so far. They're gonna travel. They're gonna have to travel some pretty serious distance in like 200 years. See, we got Krupp the Sixth here, home of the Halflings. The Moon survives thanks to its protection of neighboring states. Currently, the Moon is aligned with Stirland and Averland, providing food in return for defense against bandits.
Yeah, I don't like the agency that takes away from Mootland, which had often been a strong political component of the surrounding area. And it also removes the long-standing relationship that it has with ogres and their own military units. Now, admittedly, people like Marius Leitdorf invaded Mootland and proper kicked it in. And that has happened multiple times, but there was a proper war. It wasn't just we relied upon my next door neighbours. They had a significant fighting force in their own state army. And to reduce them down to just we only survived because of Averland and Stirland, to me is a shame. It could have been made better, but the borders make no sense. In any version of the Warhammer world previously, there's only one map that I got from Games Workshop that matched this, and that was the studio map that, as I mentioned earlier in the stream, I got later told was wrong. So it's, to me, fascinating to see that they reverted to it. It's almost like the memo was lost somewhere. And they've reverted back to that version, because this is the version of Mootland that I was given all the way back in 2005.
Strange.
Yeah, if you go check, if you write Mootland map, you'll probably find one of my maps that I did in Mootland ages ago, around about 2007. It was done for Black Library, as I recall. It'll be out there somewhere. That's the borders that I was told to use by when we got emails from GW at that time.
See, we have Summer. Whoever
House of Sommer. I don't dislike that as a name, although I think I would have preferred it down in Sudenland because it's a direct tie back to Solland, the province that's been lost in this area. So that's not a bad name.
Wizardland produces vast quantities of crops that are used as political leverage in their dealings with Talabecland and the Reichland. Raids across the border.
Wizardland is known for having terrible croplands.
I was going to say,
that
I don't
actually
think that's
makes
what
me
Wizardland
laugh.
is known for.
that one actually makes me laugh because it's known for being incredibly stony land. It's difficult to get decent crops out of. But I will note that this version of Visenland isn't Visenland as we would understand it in later books, because this includes a whole ton of, well, I suppose it is all what will be Visenland in the future, but all of Sudenland down here is what many people would have viewed as south of Visenland. This is a really odd choice for where it sits, but I also quite like it. I think this is an odd choice that I like. They've moved all of the places. Meissen isn't there. Steingart isn't there. Kroppenlieben is actually about there. Wissenberg, oh god, they've moved the rivers and they've just put things in different places. This map makes me cry for the differences that it makes for many of the locations. I mean, even Bloodkeep's not in the mountains. Look at it. Just sitting there. Bloodkeep's just like literally in the middle of what they're calling Reichland. Yeah, Bloodkeep should be right up there. Karak Asgaraz, what the heck is that doing? Songlak, oh my goodness, this is a mess. Oh my, I just noticed those ones. So Karak Asgaraz should be up almost where the shield is there with the with the Pegasus.
Yeah, and Paravan is like almost entirely mountain on this map.
Yeah, I mean, Paravan I'm fine with. I mean, it's in about the right place, doing the right thing. The pass that goes from Paravan over to Reichland, oh my goodness, it's all messed up. Oh, no, there's all manner of mistakes here.
Well, let's get through the Empire stuff.
None of it quite fits.
We got one more Empire. So we got Kruger
what else have we got?
Kruger III, the Free State of Sudenland, is a breakaway state of Wisenland, refounded by nobles claiming a link to the lost electoral seat of Saarland. Borders conflict is rife in the state as people fiercely defending its autonomy from its neighbors, even though it has one neighbor. That's fun.
I absolutely love this, and I really like that it's here. I like their description of it. I like that they haven't gone with the old Solent borders, which would have given it the land that Wisenland is currently claiming. I love that it's the borderlanders of the south. This would give Kruger, the what looks like 333rd because of the weird ones.
But it's the weird, very weird ones.
Kruger the Third, and Kruger, by the way, is an old name for the rather annoyingly for the Talabek landers in the north. It's a very old family name in the north. Kruger, in fact, founded Talapai. But let's ignore that because there could be more than one family line. This would be a commanding position in a way that is really not obvious on this map, because if we were going with the standard map, this connects directly to the River of Echoes. And this means that the River of Echoes would be extraordinarily controlled by this group, which means trade to Tilia would be controlled. The Winter's Teeth Pass, the pass that's taken, for example, by Tamarkan, it also connects to Sudenland, normally speaking. But this version of the map instead makes Sudenland almost this little island that is bounded in by mountains on all sides and is connected to nothing. It's a complete change from the version that we had before. Sudenland could not be more different, and in some respects in a worse position than it would have been if they'd run with the old version. If the old version would have had Winter's Teeth pass into the bottom of Sudenland. I
still don't understand why they have a pass going into
No, neither do I. It makes literally
no
all sense.
Fucking places.
Why is anyone going to Athelloren like that? Montdidier Pass sort of connects Bretonia down in the south through to the mountains up there. Montdidier Pass is a relatively old pass as well, before Athelloren became the horror show that it is today, because it was originally made for Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay First Edition, when there was a clear trade route from Canel down to the south and then across Montdidier Pass. But yeah, the River of Echoes has been moved, the Winter's Teeth Pass has been moved, all of that's been moved, meaning that Kruger the Third is in a pretty rubbish position, surrounded by greenskins, with a small amount of presumably dwarfs sitting up in the mountains. But it is a much, much worse position than the south of Visenland would have been in previous versions. It's super fascinating to see the changes that they've made. I imagine some of them are by mistake. And then I've got a feeling that the Winter's Teeth Pass, Montdidier Pass, all of that business is just we want to make the dwarves. We want to make the dwarves a little bit more important, so we're going to give the dwarves control of that central point. But it completely undermines the strength that the Empire Tilian connection had previously.
So curious what's going to happen. That they've revealed some of the artwork and stuff of the upcoming Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay Old World Edition. the first book for that. I am so curious what the maps are going to look like in that, if they're going to be any different from this one.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if they use that map, which means that they're basically going to build a new empire. And that's okay. I think from the very beginning, we tried to make it relatively clear that for all I was going to bitch about changes, not only is change an expected part of how Games Workshop builds its new games, and potentially a required part to ensure that they're not in any respect held back by the past and what the past had created, and they can tell their own new stories. That nevertheless means people like us, when we come along, we're definitely not going to stop complaining about the changes and saying they've done this and they've done that. But I think, the old world, the new roleplay game is almost certainly just going to basically start again. It's going to be its own thing.
Very curious.
And that will be, for people like me, both fascinating to see what they do and also horrific when all the lore that I have known previously will just be thrown out of the window. And this map already shows tons of it has been. Literally tons of it.
Yeah, it's so funny to me that they're still continuing with Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 4th Edition very actively, which is basically a different timeline now.
I mean, there's no other way to put it. The two games don't link in the way they used to, but they will be forced to with later publications because one leads to the other. That's just the way it is.
It's going to be fun. Darius Rose, shame since the steppe in our world is so diverse. Also for the Tong, do you think they'll play a big part in the old world? What can make them unique? I highly doubt they will do a damn thing in the old world.
I agree completely with you, and I also agree completely with Sotek. I think it won't be a thing.
Yeah, I think Games Workshop put them there as look, it's the Tong, and that's all it's going to be. I'd be happy to be wrong, but yeah, that's kind of what I'm expecting.
Me too, but I think that's probably right.
Lichler Chris, names are my weakest field when it comes to making things as a GM/DM. Also, apologies on the Czar spelling.
I genuinely recommend going online and just looking up historic names. Onomasticons, which is basically a dictionary for names, are a really good place to look. And I also recommend you do one other thing when you've started doing this. Look at each of the individual places as they are inside the old world or the Warhammer world, whichever part you're using, and think, how would these names change? For example, in the Empire, we have lots of gods. And a lot of those gods are very important to different parts of the Empire. So say, for example, you're from Ostermark. Mor is very important over Mosterpark. You can use the Mor parts of names, and anything related with death, add Mort to names. So you'll be using Mortdrid rather than just Mordred. Change the names with Warhammer twists. So, for example, instead of Reinhardt, you'd have Reichhard. So Reichhard instead, because you get the river Reich popping up in the names, or perhaps Reich if you want to pull on the Empire side of things. Loosely speaking, just take the existing history of names and all the different cultures you get and Warhammerize them. It means that you don't actually need to do an awful lot of work to do this. You'll find that there's all manner of name generators online. Grab one, get a bunch of names from it, and then just Warhammer it a bit by changing some
make
of the
yourself
bits.
a cheat sheet, dude.
Reichardt is Reichhardt. And that name has popped up more than once in various books because I've literally used that one.
Darius Rose, the Tong, the scary, quiet kid of the North tribes. Yeah, I very much, I would consider it a headcanon because it's not explicitly stated, but I like to hold the Tong responsible for Uzkalat getting cut off and the formation of the Chaos Force. Cole Patterson, they could have some rare sort of tree, maybe. The Tong should have a rare sort of tree. Is that what you're saying? Or are you talking about... This was a while back.
We've lost that conversation and we've no longer any idea what you're talking about.
Yeah, sorry.
Enormous apologies. Thank you for supporting the stream.
We've been yapping more than usual between these. Not sure if you talked about it, but would you each map the borders of... How would you each map the borders of Astalia? Many tiny petty kingdoms first, or one big boy kingdom? What would you keep?
I do the first.
The status quo. Yeah, I would do the first because it always makes the situation more interesting.
And the bigger ones would be obviously Magritta and Bilbali because they are. But I would definitely do the first because they have always been described that in the past, and it just adds for more diversity.
Yeah, I generally do not ever like to have this faction has a significant amount of control over a giant landmass, because especially when you're dealing with a world like this, it wouldn't make sense.
Yeah, Warhammer already suffers a little bit from monolithic groupings, so I would look to take a big chisel to that particular stone.
As fellow lore nerds, asked Nagwal, how do you cope with the haphazard trade of lore by Games Workshop? I had an annuary with the Disney's Star Wars. How do you do it? So our answers might be slightly different, but I suspect they're not very different, if at all. The big thing is to fall in love with the discovery and the making it work process. Because I used to be like that. I used to get really irritated whenever I would find a lore source that disagreed with the prior lore source, and then I started to very quickly realize that I was going to lose my fucking mind if I didn't pivot. And now I get a lot. I mean, Lorebeards, a lot of what we do that makes this show really, really fun is taking a lot of the stuff they write at genuine face value and trying to make it work, which is a pretty fun mental exercise. And I think if you view it more as a puzzle and less as somebody's come into my like beautiful sculpted statue and broke off a bunch of fucking parts of it and reassembled it, you're gonna have a better time.
Yeah, my answer to this one's pretty simple. That. What he just said. It's making sense of all. I'm just going to bring back one comment on the... let me just bring it up. Rare trees, that's when we were talking about what sort of lumber they have. And you know what? That's a good answer. And I think that if I was justifying that, that's what I would do. But they have clearly not done much depth of thought beyond there's trees there. Let's say they trade in trees. And you're right. That would be one way to resolve it, Cole.
Yeah, a lot of this, and the old world in general right now, is still very surface level. I mean, the arcane journals are thin.
Yeah,
so
they're super thin.
I hope they're gonna start delving into some depth soon, but I don't think they're gonna do any deep exploration until we're at least done with first edition.
Yeah,
which we almost are.
It's going to be coming to an end relatively soon. I really like what they're doing, while simultaneously more than happy to call out a lot of their weird choices.
Yeah, I would agree. Elspeth, I found Sotek's favorite ruler. Listen, I've made peace with Elspeth. I have no problem with her. She's fine, great, awesome.
Great.
Cool. Captain Hammond, welcome to Bellathor's General Goods. Everything is for sale here. If I had a sister, I'd sell her in a second. Cool, Bellathor. I feel like I missed something, but cool.
I know I have.
Decorates a Kobold. For a taste of y'all's future stream, is Munamim's tower/territory on the map or any Famir rep at all? So there's no mentioned Famir, but Munamim, here, let me bring this back up. Munamim lives in the Federdienst, which is around Karaburg. So it's like right up here.
Yeah.
If they put her in like where she is in the Winds of Magic book, which is cool, it's a big swamp. But that being said, the big places where you would expect to see Famir, the Cursed Marshes. Big Famir population there.
Albion.
Albion has a lot of Famir. Yeah. Pretty much anywhere where you see this symbol, hold on this map. The Coldmires would probably have a lot of Famir. I should just go back down to the easy one. But anywhere where you see this symbol, this indicates like marshlands, there's probably Famir there.
Yeah.
They get around. Which, you know, like the Scolded Sloth, probably Famir here. Because they're noted to be Famir like in the Southern Darklands. There's Famir over in Cathay. There's Famir in Norska. Like, you know, they used to be a pretty big world-spanning empire. So they're kind of all over the place. Come back on Sunday to learn more about it. Goblin Pirates? Gobrites? I don't think that's a very satisfying name for them.
That doesn't work.
I feel like we could probably do a
nice
little
try,
better.
Hammond, but that one's not selling me.
This map stream confirms my theory that Andy's ancestors are the Norse rulers from
Northuria
that originated from Angerman land instead of.
Yeah, well, you know, I'm not particularly angry, and it may come across like that, particularly because I'm Scottish and I have a tone. I'm more just factually saying how things have changed, because lots of things have changed. Some of them I feel have changed for the worse, but I can argue why they've done it. Some things I think have changed for the better. I'm particularly impressed with their better integration of the High Elves, for example. Significant changes to the map that weren't in any previous map. They're absolutely to the benefit, not just of the old world as a whole, but to the High Elves in particular. Whereas I don't think a lot of the changes in the Empire have brought anything new to the table that are good. They're just changes. They're just different ways of doing it that haven't necessarily made it better. And it's that lack of making it better that makes me nonplussed about it. But, you know, one thing, it's another.
Yeah, and it's also interesting to watch that GW has actively edited things on this map. As time has gone on, they come back and they edit different parts.
I'll call out one of those in particular. The original version that they posted of Kislev looked like the map inside the Realm of the Ice Queen. Almost entirely. There was the taiga wasn't there. All of those forests weren't there. It was a big open oblast where clearly the ancient widow ruled, and the trees were blasted down by the constant winds of winter, and that was pretty cool. And then they went, actually no, I'm going to go back to the first edition map from Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay First Edition and copy paste bits of that over. Cool for different reasons, but that is a massive change in how Kislev is being represented here. And this in no way says that the later map that you get in, say, Realms of the Ice Queen, or the map that's used in Total War to a degree, couldn't still be the case, because most of that can be knocked down through the course of time for one civilization expanse or another. So it's totally fine. I didn't
Hammond,
know that.
I gotta say, Hammond, you remind me of my father in some ways, in that you know so much random bullshit. I think
that's great. I did not know that. That's great. And indeed, I do have quite a lot of Scandinavian king blood in my ancient history. So perfect.
But good on you, man. Your trivia power is impressive. Marius liked Dwarf. No wonder dwarfs like me in Total War Warhammer 3. Darius, do you think that's not how you spell it, that Diedrich or Archaon could show up? I don't think he will. No, he doesn't. No. He's not born until like a good
later.
Yeah, he's not around for a bit.
Yeah.
Hammond, ladies are big fans of men from the Tong. I mean,
say so.
Sure, why not? Just for Clayton, the Denifestrations of Prague throwing lore out the window. To clarify, this is a very bad attempt at a joke.
That's okay. And as Defenestrations of Lore go, I think this is a classic example of Games Workshop doing what it does. Through the course of this stream, don't think of this as something new. Games Workshop, every time they do their new big map, whatever edition it's going to be, makes changes. We previously discussed, for example, the movement of Albion. It literally has shifted. The first version of Ulthuan, for example, wasn't a big circle. It was a whole bunch of islands. And then that turned into a big circle when we hit the 4th edition of Warhammer. Each edition of Warhammer is made sometimes tiny, sometimes enormous changes. The old world makes what appears to be small changes, but sometimes they are truly enormous. The lore changes for the Empire in particular are enormous. They're not small. They are huge. They are completely rewriting not just the Empire of the time they're in, but the Empire previously as well, because it has to somehow reach this version. And for example, the Attilians that were dominant for a variety of reasons no longer are. And that's in and of itself super fun. So yeah, it's typical for Warhammer. This happens.
David Whitfield, but where is Surtha Ek and his double moving impossible to accept Varg horde? Oh, the Varg not on here?
Pardon me, David.
Yeah, I don't think I saw the Varg. We got the Icelings. We've got there's the Varg. He's still here. Yeah. He's even clickable. Oh yeah, this is the one where they say they're shrouded in myth and legend because they double move to escape from anyone trying to attack them because they're assholes. Yeah, so no, they're still around. All right, so I think that is we're well over time. So I think that's a good place. I think
it's been a fun map stream nonetheless.
Yeah, I mean, it's not terrible.
No. So I'm going to conclude in an area that perhaps might be a surprise given how much I whinged through large parts of this stream. I love this map. I really love this map. And not just because it exists. And it would be super easy for them not to do this. It'd be super easy for them to do a very simple map, pop it into one of their books, and then just copy paste it again and again and again with each one of their very flimsy, tiny little lore books. Army lists. And they could have done that, and it would have sufficed. But no, we didn't get that. What we have is a huge, chunky boy full of lots of cool details. And yes, those details might contradict versions of the lore that have come previously, but this is Games Workshop. This is what we should expect. What we don't normally expect is this map. This map over this side, pardon me, as he points in the wrong direction.
Other way.
That way. Yeah, we're getting there. This way.
No,
Here we go.
No, it's the other way.
It looks correct on my screen. Anyway.
Well, mine doesn't.
That's hilarious. On my screen, it looks great. I wonder what it's going to look like when I look at the video later. What we've got is a big map of the old world and a bit more as we move over towards the east that's full of detail.
Look how far south we can go.
Look how much it goes down there. We haven't even started discussing this, admittedly, because there's not a lot of detail down there yet, but there's loads of it. And this is more than we have ever received from a mainline Games Workshop product. Literally ever. And for me, this is just marvelous. I love looking at it. I love looking at the details about it. I love tearing it apart and saying that I think they made some wrong choices. But that's okay. Part of loving these things is being able to also love them even though we don't like some of the decisions made. I think between Sotek and I, there's a whole bunch of things that if we were doing it, we would change. But you know what? There's a ton of things that they've changed that I would absolutely keep. All of Norska and how they've changed that. The elves and how they impact different parts of the map. I'm all for that. I would shift lots of the little details in the Empire just because I'm a stickler for detail. And yes, I'm neurodivergent. That being half a centimeter off really freaking bugs me. Okay? It really bugs me. And I can't get over how much it bugs me. But that's just me. Most people don't care about that shit. But I would keep all of this. I would keep the changes that they're making down the Darklands. I'd expand it significantly. It's so much good in this. But I would be remiss if I didn't say it does completely rewrite the lore in many places. And for some people, that will always be a stickler. That will be something that makes them go, ugh, why is it like that? But for me, and I think this speaks to our answer earlier when we say, what do we think of the changes? How do we cope with the lore changing all the time? For me, it's a challenge. I look at this and I think, how can this make the version of the Empire that I know already, how can these two things both work together? Because ultimately, I've always found that Warhammer is at its strongest when it draws from all of the creatives that have added to it. This is a new creative team building their version of the old world for their game. And they are doing an extraordinarily good job. Does it match everything that came before? No. Should it match everything that came before? No. They're free to make it any way that they need for their version of the game, as long as it hits those big Warhammer beats, and it absolutely does. They have, for all I have managed to whinge my way through this, nailed it. And I kind of love it for that.
Yeah, the big thing is that, it's change. And what's interesting, I think, for me and Andy, which I guess I don't think about this that often, is that a lot of the people that are coming to watch Lorebeards and enjoying the show and getting to interact with us and stuff, a lot of y'all are genuinely new fans. Are people that joined after Warhammer Fantasy blew up 10 years ago. And so for you, the lore hasn't changed. In 10 years, Warhammer has been an immovable monolith that was static. And now you're back kind of in what we always were in.
True fact.
Which isn't a bad thing. Like it's just, it is what it is. But I couldn't agree more with Andy. There are parts of this that I love. Like he said, the High Elf stuff is super fucking exciting. Genuinely. Estalia having anything going on is really cool. The fact that which we haven't gotten to see the details yet because we're still waiting for the book, but the fact that the Wood Elves actually are back in Larlorn and they're back in the Forest of Arden, that's really exciting. Norska being a larger group that controls a lot of the Chaos Waste, awesome. The Chaos Waste
blew my mind. To see Norskins above the north. Yeah, which is great. I was like, holy shit, yeah.
It's like I look over at this area in particular, and it's like, oh, there's forests and places and mountains and beastmen and Norskins and places where people can live. which is so much more interesting than the older Chaos Waste. The older Chaos Waste, it's like, oh, it's a horrible hellscape, nobody lives here. It's a lot more interesting and dynamic now, which I'm super excited about. The fact that Kislev is just one of the biggest empires in the world is so cool.
Freaking amazing.
There's a lot of really exciting things happening, and I'm just curious to see where it's going to go.
Yeah, me too. I think we've barely touched upon what we could do with these mapping streams. So if you've enjoyed that, do tell us, either down in the comments, drop some comments.
Yeah, if you want a part 2, let us know.
Yeah, if you would like that. I'll drop a topic open over on Discord as well. So if you want to talk any parts out, feel free to do so down there. And if you've got any questions about parts of it that you don't think make sense, or you think perhaps should have been added that haven't been there, do drop into Discord and talk it out with us. I'll pop that thread up right after the stream's finished. Actually, that's a lie. It'll be about 20 minutes after, because inevitably after the stream, Sotek and I will have a little chat.
Yeah, there's always
will
some
be coming
rambling.
relatively soon after this one. But yeah, I've quite enjoyed this. It's been good.
And what I will note is that if we do a part 2, which is decently likely, just be aware that we probably will wait until the next update, which will probably be when the Wood Elf book comes out, because I think Wood Elves are next. So whenever the next update happens, that is more likely when we do it. That way we could talk about the new stuff, and we could cover like Bretonnia and the dwarfs, which we didn't really talk about this time.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. As everybody out there knows, I do love discussing maps. I have done so many of them for Games Workshop over time that I can't help. I mean, one book alone I did like about 40, maybe 50. So yeah, I have done a lot of GW mapping. So it's really nice to talk about something that I have done a lot of work on in my past.
Yep. And with that, that's it for this Wednesday night.
I don't think it is. I think we've got one other comment that we didn't bring up.
That. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see that. This is the first Warhammer that I'm watching develop live, so it's really interesting. Not planning on getting any minis, though. That's fine.
That's fine. Indeed, you will not be the only one. It's really interesting for me because just as one nice little comment to end our stream on, I thought Warhammer was dead. Now, I don't mean dead, because Warhammer never truly dies. There's always probably going to be a role-playing game that is set in the Warhammer world somewhere. And even if Games Workshop never touched Warhammer again, Warhammer would probably continue to be developed. But I never expected there to be a live, active, intellectual property with Warhammer attached to it that writers would have to stick to. What I expected was the past catalogue is what stands, and you can write within that play park. So when Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 4th edition came along, that is what I was dealt as a hand by Games Workshop. We've already finished this world. We're done. So you can write anything in it, as long as it matches what came before, and it is Warhammer. And that meant that we got to push boundaries in places. That's where the gnomes came from, for example. That gave us an opportunity to dive into parts of the Warhammer world that other games were playing around with and develop it further, like Ubersreich, which had been played with significantly with Vermintide, for example. And I just never expected there to be more lore to consider. I thought that was it. And then the old world has come. And the old world has turned an IP that was easy to write for. Very easy to write for. Because all of the work is there. And you can just look it up. You can learn it. You can become an expert. And if you are a writer that loves the Warhammer world, you will create something awesome from it. But it has changed the nature of the Warhammer world, because now it is active. And changes are happening almost monthly. I wouldn't say weekly, but I'd say monthly. And as each of these changes come in, factions that were solid become much more amorphous and uncertain. The Bretonnians have changed already significantly. Bretonnians are no longer what they once were.
They're so much better. They're so much better.
Completely better. The High Elves have changed, and again, for the better. The stories are developing. The Empire has changed significantly, and my personal preference, not for the better. I would argue in some respects they've tried to make it more heroic than it was previously and more together than it was previously, and they've ditched all the previous stories. That doesn't make it better, it's just different.
You know what's weird though about the Empire that I just have to I'm so sorry for interrupting, but
no, not at all.
I gotta vomit it out. It's still so weird to me that they're like, oh yes, the Empire, the whole big deal is they've got these 4 Uber groups that are fighting. And then the book comes out and they go, and the 2 playable subfactions are Nuln, who's not with any of these guys, and then like the Nightly Orders, once again, not with any of these guys.
Not with any of them. It's mental.
It's an interesting choice. I don't think it's a bad choice.
The choices are certainly interesting frequently.
It makes me wonder what they're up to.
Yeah, agreed. And this has changed the nature of Warhammer writing, Warhammer license work. So if you happen to be working on a computer game right now, say for example, Total War, and you've got new lore to write, you no longer can just write it. You've got to check. Because there's new books now. And these books have changed history. The history that you knew before when you were, say, for example, writing about Nuln or you were writing about Altdorf has now actually changed. The locations that you used to dealing with in, say, Norska, or perhaps up near the world's edge over by the realms of chaos itself, they've also all been updated. There are new locations there, some of which should be in your games. And you're going to have to think, do I include them? Do I not? And what if I make a pitch for it and I got it wrong? Because everything's uncertain now, because there is another team that you are not necessarily in contact with developing the world. Right now, the Old World team. And they're building that world in a different direction. And you will not be privy to any of that until either it comes out, or if you're very lucky, you get to see underneath the hood, if you're a licensee, working on that area. And you can't do that thing you think is really great because it contradicts everything we're just building. Warhammer has massively changed because of the Old World in ways that we don't necessarily appreciate, because it's not just a change to the world and our general bitching as we move around the map. It changes in a fashion that means that everyone writing for it can no longer be certain that what they're writing is acceptable, because another team may have already contradicted it 6 months ago in their plans for, say, Kislev or something else. And all the work you've done is now uncertain because all of the past is gone. And that for me is super exciting. I can happily say I'm glad I'm no longer the man responsible for having to deal with that, because it is so much harder. I had it easy. When I was running Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 4, it was an IP that was fixed and there was nothing else to consider. Now it is an IP that is developing, which means that it's always going to be harder. So do take a moment to feel some sympathy for the poor writers out there who have brilliant ideas that they can no longer use because Warhammer has changed.
Mm-hmm. We're skipping over this yet.
God damn it.
All right, guys, that's gonna be it for us tonight. So just some quick things that are coming up. Is Lorehammer on this week?
So we weren't going to be, but as it turns out, we probably will be. We weren't going to do anything this Friday because it's officially our week off. We have scheduled Fridays off about once every 5-6 Fridays, and we were going to be off, but after the session last week, 3 folks went, I'm not doing anything next week because I forgot we were off. Do you want to do something? And I was like, you know what? I probably will. I haven't decided what we're doing yet, but it's going to be another one-off stream. And for those of you who watched last Friday's one, oh God, that opening, who watched last Friday's one, yeah, this one's going to be arguably worse. It's going to be fun. So we're going to find out tomorrow.
For anyone that wants to see Andy's best impression of Inglourious Bastards, go watch last week's episode.
That was really funny. Just as a small aside on that one, I didn't realize what I was building until I finished the scene, and I was like, I've got it. I know what's going to happen. And I sat down, and I was like, right, I need to write some bits out so I can give it to the players. And I went, oh shit, I've just built something that's really like this. And I went, you know what? Don't care. It actually flips on its head in a variety of interesting ways. I'm running with it. And I warned everyone beforehand and they didn't care either. So we just went. It was good. It was fun.
But yeah, so there will be apparently something this Friday for Lorehammer. Then Saturday in the Rookery.
Oh, Rookery, we've got ourselves Bomb Trench Crusade. We are speaking to oh God, it's so late in the day, the name literally disappeared. Francina. Yeah, so we are speaking to the creator of Trench Crusade about bringing world concepts to life through art and other things. And we'll also have Mark Gibbons there, who has just very recently done a whole bunch of very good Trench Crusade pieces of work. I first met him, Trench Crusade guy, doing art for the Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay starter set.
Small world.
Because he did, I hired him to do the goblins. If you remember the goblins that are in the sewer of Ubersreich?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He did that piece, and he also did the demon headmaster.
Ah, fun. The goblin narrative is very funny depending on how you play it. That one can go really bad with a group of PCs. But anyway, and then this Sunday, we're doing the Famir, which is going to be a really, really interesting stream. It is, I will tell you now, a bit of a loaded topic. It does come with a number of things that it's going to be elements of it are going to be a fairly serious discussion about how dark fantasy was written, particularly back in like the late 80s and the early 90s. Which, if you ever read any dark fantasy books from back in, it was everywhere at the time.
Yeah, true fact. And it's going to be an interesting one because they are true to many a myth, and the biggest issue with them isn't how they were written; it's how the rest of it was written. But I've got quite a lot of commentary on that to come.
Yeah, because I actually have some genuine questions for Andy about the Famir because I've been reading up on them and I keep expecting to come across things and I can't find it. So it'll be interesting to have that discussion.
Indeed. Yeah, that's going to be super fun. So, yeah, that's this Sunday at 4 p.m. UK time, or what is it for you?
10 a.m. CST. Sorry.
Thank you. 10 a.m. It's the morning. That was horrible.
But yeah, should be a really, really good time. Please take care of yourselves. That's pretty much up as for us. We'll figure out what we're doing next. I think I know what we're going to do next Wednesday, but I don't want to spring it on it.
Yeah, don't just spring it. That's unfair. Let me at least get one chance to say no.
Yeah. Well, it's this. You can't say no if I say it.
No, you said it live. It's become a thing.
All right. So we will see you guys next time. Please take care and good night.
See you later. Bye-bye.